What's good, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I'm Vince, that's Trevor, that's Brian, and we are here for a multitude of reasons, but primarily today we are kicking things off with the commitment of Teddy Jarrard, a 2027 quarterback, and he is now Irish. And so we are going to break it all down for you like we always do, and we're going to tell you why this is a huge pickup for Notre Dame. He's a four-star quarterback, depending on, of course, what outlet you look at. But he's a four-star quarterback. Number
ones
two,
that matter.
I know, right? He's the number 2 quarterback in the 27 class. It's a big pickup for Notre Dame, obviously, and I believe he's the second commitment overall.
Third
commitment overall.
Can't believe you forgot
class.
the long snapper.
I know. Well, he's the only one I remember. So
okay. Number 3 joined Sean Kraft, number 1 long snapper in the country, and also a very talented linebacker in Ellis McGaskin.
Yes. So
Southern.
Yes, which is kind of something we're going to talk about in a minute. But this is a huge pickup for Notre Dame. Got their quarterback in the class. We all know that is kind of the launching point of a class, is to get the quarterback in. This kid has a lot of tools. He's got a lot of talent. I was watching this film earlier today. This is going to be a fun one for Notre Dame, but also one that I'm excited to watch for the next 2 years to see what he kind of brings to the table when he actually gets to Notre Dame.
You want to hear how crazy this is, Vince? You want to know how crazy this is? When Teddy Jarrard arrives at Notre Dame as a true freshman, C.J. Carr will be a senior.
C.J. Carr will be in the NFL.
He'll be senior eligible.
Right.
But you get my point?
Yes,
That's how crazy recruiting is now. It's like C.J. Carr, who's going into his redshirt freshman season, will be a senior when Teddy Jarrard arrives, and Kenny Minchie will be a fifth-year senior in college when Teddy Jarrard arrives. It's crazy how sped up this is, but if you're going to start a class off, man, it's great to start one off with a kid like that's like Teddy Jarrard. We're going to break down his game, the things we like, the things he got to improve on, because he's a sophomore. There's obviously going to be areas to improve upon. But when you can kick a class off with a big-time quarterback, that's a great one. Southern kid. There's just a lot to be excited about. And the other thing, too, guys, is, we'll get into this later as well, but you look at the other hats on the table. Like Notre Dame is they're big game hunting, and they're going against the big boys. It's a fun aisle to be shopping down for recruiting, and great way to obviously kick off our Thursday show, man, talking about a commitment from a highly ranked quarterback, a talented quarterback, and guy that's generating a lot of buzz right now.
No doubt about it. And again, this is one that people get excited about, obviously. Even you don't have to be into recruiting to get excited about a quarterback, right? And so Notre Dame gets their quarterback pledge. Now they got to hold on to him for 2.5 years, but that's whatever. But we're gonna talk about what he brings to the table and all that fun stuff, Brian. So I'm gonna throw it to you. This is one of my second favorite part of our commitment shows, is the backstory and kind of how this whole thing went in the 27 class. And I don't know what direction you're going to go in, but the 27 class has been interesting for Notre Dame from a quarterback standpoint.
Oh yeah,
they were very late to the table. Only offered 2 guys.
Offers. They were late with
offers. Right. So I throw it to you for the backstory on how Teddy Jarrard became Irish.
Well, I mean, this is the process right or wrong? People would ask me that all the time. And what Notre Dame did was they were recruiting quarterbacks all along. People think they haven't offered a kid, so they're not talking to him, they're not evaluating him, they're not getting to know the family. No, they're doing all that. They're just
feet up in the corner,
right? Just hanging out. Well, we'll watch film, and then whenever we decide who we like, we'll offer him, start talking to him. That's not what was going on. They were obviously developing these relationships, and that developing relationships was part of the process. And so, Notre Dame goes into the winter. They start evaluating kids. They get kids on campus. Peyton Houston visits, Peter Bork visits, Teddy Jarrard visits. They go then on the road in the spring and see a bunch of these kids. They got to see a lot of them throw live. They're looking at transcripts. They're talking to coaches. They're talking to everybody, trying to get to know, these young men and who they are. And there's a lot of guys on the board. I thought they would offer 4 or 5 guys, and there were 4 or 5 guys, but they just kept not offering people. And you're just like, okay, they're going to offer somebody next week. All right, cool. And then next week goes by, no offer. Oh, we're going to offer somebody next week, no offer, And eventually they don't throw out their first offers until June 21st. And so everybody asked me, is this a good process? And my answer was always kind of like, well, let me know when ask me again when we find out who they got, because at the end of the day, the process works if it, is good if it works. And at the end of the day, it worked. Notre Dame ended up offering on June 21st 2 quarterbacks. They offered Teddy Jarrard and Peyton Houston. And we've broken down Peyton Houston before on the show. I absolutely love Peyton Houston. He's a big-time player. He's the more advanced quarterback now, and it's not close. When you look at Teddy Jarrard, what the staff is doing, they're banking on the upside. So there's the high floor guy in Peyton Houston with a lot of arm talent. Then there's the more raw, developmental, high upside kid in Teddy Jarrard, and that's who they offered first. And it essentially came down to, for the staff, we need to get one of those two guys. Because if you didn't get one of those two guys, you're now turning to the next batch of quarterbacks. And it's like, well, we were just kidding. We liked you just as much as those.
That's always my favorite. Yeah.
And so Notre Dame offered those two players, and going into it, they knew they had a somewhat of an outside shot with Peyton Houston, but you have to get into the game. They knew that they had a better shot with Teddy Jarrard, and they looked at it not like, oh, Peyton's here and Teddy's here, or Teddy's here and Peyton's here. It was just kind of like 1A and 1B, and it doesn't matter who's A or who's B. They're both one. You had to get one of those two guys. And so you talk about like, well, did you land a top prospect at position? Yeah, you did, because as long as you got one of Peyton Houston or Teddy Jarrard, you were getting a top quarterback. You were getting a guy that after all the evaluation, Malachi Ziegler coming up to throw on campus, Teddy Jarrard came on campus this summer and threw in front of the staff in a more private workout. And I wish he would have thrown at Irish Invasion, but, schedule didn't work out that way. But you needed to get one of those two, and they did. And just it really connected kind of right away with Teddy Jarrard. And from what I can gather talking to people, I don't think going into this process, the staff thought that Teddy Jarrard is going to be one of the top two guys. Because if you look at his sophomore film, and we'll evaluate, there's some things to like, but there's just better sophomore film out there of other quarterbacks. But the tools were really impressive. The character really popped when they got to know him and his family. But then as you saw him this spring and summer throwing, there was a jump made. And the body, the strength, the arm, the mechanics got better. And that was the thing that kind of rose Teddy above some other guys who maybe had better sophomore film. Was, okay, we love the talent, but it was kind of projecting that talent on, to the next level. He's got 2 years of high school left. By the time we got to the June workouts, it was like, okay, this kid's got legit arm talent. Because like those June throwing sessions were important for the staff. And when they saw Teddy throw live, it was kind of like, okay, like the things we were hoping we would see from him, we're seeing. And that's why him and Peyton Houston were the first two to get offers, and why Teddy kind of rose above a lot of those other guys in contention, like Malachi Ziegler, like Isaiah Abrams, like Peter Bork. And, just the staff just kind of fell in love with him. And I think the other thing they like too is just the fit is really great. I mean, he came from a Christian school. He did transfer, to North Cobb High School. So if you see the logo, his dad, we thought his dad gave it away. His dad it looked like an ND logo on there, but it's NC for North Cobb. He was at North Cobb Christian his first 2 years, so this will be his first year at the public school. So he's trying to challenge himself at either a higher level, which I think is good. But it made a lot of sense for Notre Dame to have these two kids as the quarterback, and you had to land one. So did the process work? Yeah, it worked, because they identified the guys that they liked the most, and they got one of them, and they got him quick. And when they offered guys, it was pretty immediate that Notre Dame was like a top school, like 1A, 1B, 1C. And within a couple weeks after that, it was, okay, Notre Dame is one. And then Teddy decided, you know what, this is where I want to be. So I think that was big. I think that there's a lot of things that played into that. The relationship that Coach Gaduli has been building. Again, Gino Gaduli didn't start building the relationship on June 21st when he offered. This has been going on for months, and I think that relationship really connected. And I think in this instance, doing the offers the way they did kind of impacted Teddy Jarrard. Like, wow, you guys really do want me. Like, me and him are the only guys getting offered. Like, all these other quarterbacks, they don't have offers, just me and him, right? You guys like us that much. And I think that mattered. I think that impacted Teddy a lot. And I kind of like that. He wanted to go to a place that truly was like, you're our guy. And Notre Dame was able to sell that on him because of the process. And so I think being at the rival, he was voted the top quarterback at the Rivals camp that had 26 and 27 players at it. There was a lot of Notre Dame guys there. You had two offensive linemen. Javian Osborne was there. Joey O'Brien was there. I think that played a role in it too. And just over time, it pretty quickly realized like Notre Dame's a place to be, despite Ohio State pushing for him, Michigan pushing for him, Georgia pushing for him. And Notre Dame was able to win the deal and go into the South and land a talented quarterback and beat out some big boys to do it.
It's always nice when you watch one of these commitment videos, of the hats and everything. I mean, those are some pretty legit hats that were on the table, Brian. And that as a fan, who's been covering Notre Dame football and college football for a long time, it's nice to see Notre Dame win some of these battles against the blue blood teams that are really good at recruiting. I mean, Penn State's really good at recruiting, Ohio State, Georgia, like those are legit schools that were after this kid, and he chose Notre Dame. I mean, that's a big plus. Again, we're going to break down the numbers. We're going to talk about all of that, but just from a viewpoint of, okay, what was the offer list like? Who was going after this kid? That makes my heart real happy that he chose the ND hat over those other hats that were on the table. So now he is Irish. He is officially committed. Like I said, the third commitment in the 27 class, first on offense, and he's in the class, Trevor. And so what is the class impact of Teddy Jarrard coming in and claiming he's Irish now?
Yeah, Notre Dame continues to stay hot on the recruiting trail. This is a huge pickup, and we've talked about it already in this show, but I love when quarterbacks are kind of the foundation of your recruiting class. You can go back and think about previous recruiting classes, and CJ Carr was helping build out the 2024 class. We're seeing it right now with Noah Grubbs being a very instrumental piece in helping build out the 25 class. And now that opportunity is in front of Teddy Jarrard as well. I'm sorry, for Noah Grubbs in the 26 class, not the 25 class. But now you're starting to see that Teddy Jarrard has the opportunity in front of him to help now build out what this 2027 class is going to start looking like. And Vince, you talked about perception and what that means to get rivals number 2 quarterback, Georgia's number 5 player in the state in Notre Dame's class. That's going to help down the road with some of these other big name skilled player targets that they're wanting to bring in. When you start thinking about, the Burrells of the world and the Julius Joneses of the world, that's going to help kind of sell what Notre Dame's recruiting class
Grant
is.
Haviland's a big-time tight end from Georgia who's close with Teddy Jarrard. That's another guy that it's going to have an impact with specifically, but yeah, keep going.
No, it's big. It's big for perception. You start talking about what it means to Notre Dame's team specifically. It fits the mold of what Mike Denbrock wants under center at quarterback. He wants somebody that can push the ball down the field vertically. And I know we're still going to continue to have conversations around, but he also had Jaden Daniels who could run and do all this stuff. Agreed. But where was Jaden Daniels the most effective and the most dangerous year he won the Heisman? Pushing the ball down the field. What did he want to do last season the most with a mobile quarterback? He wanted to try to develop Riley into a player that could push the ball down the field. And you're starting to see it. You're starting to see why now the quarterback room looks like the way it does. You see why they're bringing in Noah Grubbs. You saw why they flipped Blake Hebert. And now you see why they're bringing in a player like Teddy Jarrard. We're going to dive into it when it comes into the film. But this is on brand for what Mike Denbrock wants to have in running his offense. Gino Guidugli is also, lock key with him in what their identity of the Notre Dame offense is, who they want their quarterback to be in South Bend for years to come. And the more they keep stacking quarterback classes like this, the farther and farther away that, transfer portal quarterback era for Notre Dame gets further and further back in the rearview mirror. They're truly starting to build something awesome. You mentioned something earlier about Notre Dame going into the South and getting another player from the South. This is, the third one in this class. Sean Kraft was from North Carolina. Ellis McGaskin was from Alabama. Now Teddy Jarrard is from Georgia. Teddy Jarrard is the 7th player from Georgia that Notre Dame has signed since the 2024 class, which I think is huge.
We talk about states that you want to prioritize if you're Notre Dame, and we've talked about Pennsylvania and Texas and North Carolina. Those are states that they're prioritizing more, but Georgia's been one they've really been trying to get more and more into for a while. You got TJ Jones in 2010, you've got Stephon Tuitt in 2011, Tyler Newsome, Kyle Hamilton. This is definitely a state that's been very good to Notre Dame. They haven't gotten a ton of kids, but the kids they've got have been impactful. And that's allowing them to start to get more, because you can go say, hey, look, man, look what we did with Stephon Tuitt. Look what we did with TJ Jones. He got drafted. Stephon got drafted in the second round. Kyle Hamilton was a first-round draft pick. And when you can have that kind of success, guys, you look at it and say, okay, Tommy Trumbull was a 3rd-round draft pick. He was a 3-star kid they got out of the state of Georgia. So you look at it and say, you had a true chat. Yes, thanks, chat. Anthony Knapp, true freshman, starting left tackle from the state of Georgia. So they've been able to start having more and more success because they were able to lay that foundation, and they kind of do it in stretches. Like there's a couple in a year, and they go a couple years not get anybody, then they'd get another guy. But this is definitely a state that Notre Dame, and they got a commitment last year from Isaiah Canyon. They couldn't hold him in the class, but like it's clear that Georgia's a priority state. When you can get a quarterback from that state, big time quarterback, highly ranked quarterback, and reputation wise and all that from that state, it helps big time in that state. And if you look at, but it also, you think about what states border the state of Georgia, right? That's going to have an impact with those players too. So you look at state of Florida. Well, there's a big time kid that we all love in the state of Florida named Julius Jones Jr. that Notre Dame would really like to have in this class. This is one of those things that impacts that. So, I mean, you've got a running back, Corey Hadley, you've offered from Georgia, Grant Haviland at tight end. You've offered KJ Green and David Jacobs, 2 stud defensive ends from the state of Georgia. You've offered Jake Godfrey, a linebacker from the state of Georgia, Kamari Dorsey from the state of Georgia. So there's a lot of those really talented players from the state in 27, and there's some 28 kids that the staff is already talking to that they're looking at. And then, of course, you go Florida, South Carolina, Alabama, those states that border it. It's a big-time pickup regionally in an area where Notre Dame is clearly trying to have more success. You're trying to recruit the state of North Carolina. Well, this kid from Georgia's just another thing that factors into that. So I think this is you talk about how it impacts the class. It impacts the class in a big way in that regard too, guys. I think that's a big part of it. And as we said, when you can land a big-name quarterback to start your class off with, that helps. I mean, look, what class did they have a big time quarterback in who's been locked in, no wavering, nothing? 24 class, that was an elite class. 26 class, that's an elite class. Noah Grubbs has not once wavered. Now, some Notre Dame fans have wavered on him, unfortunately, but he hasn't wavered on Notre Dame. And look what class they're building around him. They had a big time quarterback in the 2025 class, but he was never locked in. Your kids knew. We talked about time, like, why do these receivers visit the same weekend as Deuce? And then, like, right away, they just stop looking at Notre Dame or stop favoring Notre Dame. And you wonder why. And then, like, oh, now we know why. Because Deuce was always, wavering. And that class wasn't as good offensively. I don't think it's not the only reason that was true, but it's not a coincidence that the classes that had an early quarterback ended up being that way. And this is just a huge start to that class. Because, look, guys, they're at the point now where if you want to stay where you are as a top program in college football, you got to stack these classes up year after year after year. Bama didn't have number 1 ranked class one year and then number 15 the next year, number 27 the next, and then up to number 2 and then number 11. They were stacking up big time. And I only use rankings as a reference. I don't really care what the rankings are. I care about the talent in the class. But my point is Bama wasn't doing this with their recruiting classes. Georgia was stacking classes. Clemson was stacking classes. And Notre Dame was starting to stack classes. And the 27 class nationally is absolutely loaded at some very important positions. And being able to kick your class off with a really talented and productive linebacker from the state of Alabama and Ellis McGaskin that's not getting enough conversation, and now a quarterback from Georgia in Teddy Jarrard is a great way, fellas, to kick this class off, this 2027 class off. It's huge.
So does that mean it's time for my favorite part of the show, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of get there if you want. I mean, there's all these other things we can talk about here, Vince, if you want. But I guess we can watch a little bit of film.
I mean, we're still going to talk about him.
But I think thing too is, like, when I talk about Teddy, right, prepare people for this. There's things I really like about him, and there's things that I need to see him improve upon. You got to remember, and I've had to tell we were talking about this before the show, so you got to remind yourself, and I've had to do this myself because sometimes I get a little bit like, man, like, what am I thinking about this kid? And you got to remember, this is a sophomore. It's a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tools there, things that he's going to have to work on, and we'll point some of that out. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about, you don't see as much in the highlights. You'll see more in the game film. And so there's about 3 or 4 game films that I've been able to watch with him too. But the tools are there.
I will say he set up his film very interestingly. It's the first time I've seen films set up like this. He set it up like with the way, the kind of throws that he makes is one section,
Hey, Houston kind of did that too. It's like, I wonder like where that's coming from.
Yeah.
But you're correct. It's like, we'll get to it now. But I did think that was interesting.
Yeah,
but
I wanted to prepare people for that because
he's an interesting one because the tools are a lot better than some of the production. I mean, you look at his sophomore season, guys, he passed for 2,647 yards. He claims to have 2,783. I don't think they counted for his state title game, perhaps. Completed 71.8% of his passes, 31 touchdowns, 5 picks. Interestingly, he started as a true freshman at North Cobb Christian and passed for 2,065 yards. He only completed 58 only. I mean, as a true freshman. 58.8% of his passes, had 18 touchdowns and 11 picks. Just in 1 year, from freshman to sophomore, same high school, jumped from 58.8 completion percentage to 71.8. Jumped from 18 touchdowns and 11 picks to 31 touchdowns and 5 picks. So you saw a pretty significant jump just in that 1 year, and I think there's a lot more room for him to go. But I wanted to set that stage here as we do get ready to dive into the film and break down Teddy Jarrard, because as we talked about, fellas, there's a lot of tools to like. And the first thing, if you're someone who puts a lot of emphasis on body type, he is prototypical 6'3 plus. He's already listed at 190, 195, and he's still kind of thin. He's going to be at least 210, 215 when it's all said and done.
He's just a big body. I mean, he towers over a lot of these kids.
He's a little gangly right now, but you can see the frame, guys. You can see the broad shoulders and all that. He's a kid that's willing to throw the ball down the field. You can see kind of the long levers, long-armed kid. I get nervous with long-armed quarterbacks, but he has a really clean throwing motion. It's really quick throwing motion, as you can see there. It's very much a whipping throwing motion. What you also see on this clip, because like this looks like, oh, great highlight. He throws it from the far hash 33 and he throws it to the other 30. That's not that far of a throw, and it kind of hangs. But watch number one, 2 things about that. Number one, he's a freaking sophomore. He's going to get a lot stronger, and that ball is going to jump out. But this first clip is an example of what I'm talking about. And you see it even more so on the game film. There's no push off of his back foot at all. This is an all-arm throw, and he has a bad habit of getting onto that front foot way too quick and not really driving and transitioning that weight from back to front, which is something that is correctable, but it also kind of shows, like, imagine what the arm's going to look like when he finally kind of fixes all that and starts driving in off of things. But he has this habit of really shifting the weight too much to the front foot, which caused the ball to not explode out. But there's other clips, and there's one coming up here in a second where he drives a post route for a touchdown. And you're like, holy moly, that's what I'm talking about. But you see on some of these last 2 clips, guys, he's got some gunslinger to him. He plays outside of the pocket.
And this one right here, there's a kid running wide open over the middle of the field, but he throws it into double coverage.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the kid catches it for a touchdown. He's got some good receivers on his team too, I noticed.
Yeah, but like this play right here, back foot, he's got a one-on-one, throw it up, let his guy. This is the one you're talking about?
Yeah, look at the kid right by the official.
Yeah.
Walk-in touchdown. That would have been an easy one, obviously, but he wants the big one.
He throws it high. He gets the ball up.
Absolutely. It's a great throw.
Yeah.
It's a great throw.
Yep. But he's got some of that gunslinger to him, Vince, to your point.
Yeah.
And this is another example, fitting the ball into tight windows. Just kind of, hey, I see it and hit it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got some of that to his game.
Yeah, he's not afraid.
No, he's got some. He plays with some swagger, but not that arrogance that makes him make dumb throws. Really nice ball placement here with the back shoulder throw, like what he does there. But you see it, like when he sees it, he lets it rip. I mean, he throws with a lot of conviction, and that's an important thing, fellas. You need quarterbacks that throw with conviction, and Teddy certainly does that. This is an example of what I'm talking about. You can just see this is a really strong-armed throw. There's no lower body in this throw at all.
All arm.
And he just snaps that sucker off in between 3 guys.
Yeah.
And as he gets older, that throw is going to be there more. This is a throw I'd like to see him lead this guy more instead of throwing the back shoulder, but he gets it high and far hash throw. Go ahead,
Well,
Trev.
and that comes into the power transfer conversation that you're having. I think he'd be able to get it out there a little bit more if he was able to drive off of his back foot a little bit more. You see
this
it when
one he does a little bit better, right? Like, the example, there's a little bit more push off here. You see that? Like right there, there's just a little bit more of a push off right there. And look at the ball get up and down so much quicker than it did on that other throw. Like watch this throw, how it hangs up. All right. And then watch how the other throw kind of, like, this one gets up, hangs up a little bit. The last one definitely hung up. And then this one gets up there, gets up and gets down pretty quickly on that back shoulder. And you see them be able to get that just a little bit more zip on the ball. But yes, Trev, the keep going with that weight distribution.
Yeah, I mean, because for anybody that's unfamiliar with it, the reason why you need to drive off your back foot is you can get your hips engaged, and that's where all the torque comes when you generate throwing power. You hear a lot of people talk about strong arm quarterbacks, and it's not just about how physically strong your right arm is. And so there's plays on his highlight tape where you see him. It's more noticeable when he's on the move because he has to throw and drive off of his back foot.
And the ball jumps out of his hand.
Throws, we'll get to it, but some of his throws on the run are like, okay.
Yeah. This is one that I like right here, guys. He can't step into the throw because there's pressure coming, but you see a little bit more of that back foot push off here.
Yep.
Still gets to it, but the ball still kind of jumps out. And there's some other things that this hurts too, in that when you plant too quickly on your front foot, and you see this is a perfect example. This is what I'm talking about. Once he locks that front foot right there, he can't finish with his hips. When you lock that way, and he tends to lock too centered, it closes off your hips from really finishing off that throw. And so it hurts his ball placement, especially on throws to the left a little bit. But as I've said before, I said this to a coach, a friend of mine the other day, that I just running my thoughts by him, and he completely agreed with me. Is like, I have no problem when a kid has footwork things they got to improve upon. No problem, because that's the most easily correctable thing that you can do. I get concerned when a kid has throwing motion issues, and I see no throwing motion issues. My only throwing motion complaint with Teddy is he pats the ball right before he throws it. A lot of kids do that. It's correctable. It's also not like a huge thing in college. It'll be more of an issue in the NFL. But I think this is the throw. Yeah, this is a really nice throw here too, guys. And but see, he's a little bit more drive. You see that? He's not leaning forward.
He actually picked up his front foot a little bit.
Yeah.
As opposed to locking it in.
And he snaps it off, and the ball comes out with a lot more velocity.
I will say he gets into a bad habit of throwing off his back foot a lot because he gets a lot of pressure in his face.
Yes.
A lot of pressure. And, maybe that'll change when he goes to the different school and, that kind of stuff. But I think he throws off his back foot a lot because of that.
But I kind of like that, though, Vince, because, like, if you can do that, I know you're going to be able to play behind a good offensive line.
100%.
Notre Dame.
But you know how you can get into a bad habit, though, when you're just used to having so much pressure in your face. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This one really snaps it off. Like, you see the strong arm there, but even still, watch how that front foot locks him in place, and he can't really finish the throw. You see that? But the ball still snaps off because he's got a really strong arm.
Yeah.
If he can just kind of fix that lower body footwork just a little bit, you're going to see the ball without gaining a single ounce of strength, a single ounce of weight. That ball's just going to jump out even more. And this is on the highlight tape. There's some throws, like he threw a seam route in a playoff game that just died on him because of this. But this is where I really like watching this kid play. He doesn't run a lot, but he can run.
Mm-hmm.
There's another play where he takes off running. He's very good. He's a lot like how Kenny Minchie was in high school, where Kenny was a good athlete, but Kenny ran around to buy time to throw. And Teddy does the same thing. For a young kid, especially Vince, does a great job of keeping his eyes downfield.
Yes. The previous play specifically, when he throws that touchdown pass.
Yeah.
He throws across his body, which of course you don't like a lot, but he keeps his eyes downfield. He saw a guy come open. He makes the throw when he could have run. He could have run and gotten out of bounds, not getting touched.
Yeah.
But he didn't. Yeah.
As a runner, he's a chain mover, but I love watching this kid throw on the run. Like, look at the juice that comes out of the ball, his hand on this one, because he's got to throw. He's got to throw with some juice. He's got to get his core into the throw, and the ball, it really explodes out when he does that. Nice. He's a chain mover as a runner, but he's a good athlete. You can see it here. Look at the, buying time. He's not heavy-footed in the pocket. He stays loose. There's no panic here. He sees the rush. He feels it. Okay, let me find my way out of here. But look at him. His eyes downfield. Let me find somebody, get the ball out, complete a pass. Like, that's good stuff right there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's real good stuff right there. And he brings that a bit. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Finds a guy behind him, sees the defense, knows he's got a guy coming open, and then just snaps the ball off down the field. Like, this is when you really see the arm strength. And when he throws in rhythm also, he'll drive off that back foot a little bit more, and the ball will pop out. This is where you kind of see good open field runner, guys. Not going to be Riley Leonard, not going to be Kenny Minchie. But as far as athletic pocket passer, he's absolutely an athletic pocket passer. And he'll be able to do things like this. This translates to the next level. This ability to buy time, protect the ball a little bit, son.
Yeah,
you move.
Yeah,
let that ball hang out a little bit. But look at this throw. Like, that's a hose, guys. Like, this is an absolute hose.
Yeah,
getting that ball down the field. That's one of those ones. Like, will that translate as much to the next level? Maybe, maybe not. But it does show off the arm strength. Able to get the corner here, pick up some positive yards. But yeah, the guy, when he's moving around, he's dangerous because he keeps his eyes down the field. Love it.
Yep, absolutely. And it'll come with time. You brought it up. Just two hands on the football when you're maneuvering the pocket.
Right. He's a sophomore, guys.
Yep.
Sophomore film. It still bewilders me that I'm like, man, I'm evaluating a sophomore. I got to remind myself of that.
Yeah, like, get used to it.
This stuff translates. College DBs make these mistakes too. They see a quarterback running, they're gonna come up because he looks like he's running a little bit there.
Sure.
He's not like going like this. Guy comes up, boom, right over top of him. That's what I talk about. You talk about playmaker, like playing a little bit of street ball. That's street ball right there.
Yeah.
And what I like about Teddy is he does have some street ball in him. This is a rope.
That is a rope.
Yeah. There's a couple here in a row, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that
his shoulders are square to the sideline, guys. Like, think about that. You always say, get outside, square your shoulders to the line of scrimmage. That's how you teach it. His shoulders are square to the referee right there. And he just snaps this thing off. But
in
because
a small window too.
Right, but because he's running, he naturally has to use his core more, and that ball explodes out of his hand downfield, 25-yard line to the end zone. That's where you see the arm strength. This is another one. This is a freaking rope that he throws right from the 50 to the 15. That's a 35-yard rope, and he flicks it because now his core has to be involved because he's on the run. If he can translate that to his pocket throwing, fellas, his arm talent is going to explode.
Yeah.
And that's why I say right now, he's not as good as Peyton Houston is today. This is a perfect example right here, what I'm talking about.
Dies.
Right? See that front foot? Right? He locks way too soon on that front foot. There's no push off the back foot, and the ball just drives right into the ground because he's fighting his upper body, and it just dies. Okay? So that's an area improvement. Today, who's the better quarterback today? Peyton Houston is the better quarterback today. But who's going to be the better quarterback in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? That's what Notre Dame is banking on Teddy Jarrard because the tools are outstanding. This is a great throw.
These play action throws are great.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a rope.
Well, yeah, and you see the zip. He's on the move. He's able to plant off of his back foot and go.
He sells play action really well also.
Yep.
Like, it looks like he's going to hand the ball off. He doesn't rush out of it. Good sell, gets his eyes around, turns around, gets his eyes around.
Look at that
this
throw.
Is a cannon.
Look at that throw, man.
Like, this is where he's most from the 36-yard line, middle of the field on a
goal line
corner route on a line.
I mean, that's my favorite throw.
When I was a junior in high school, I could make a throw from the 35-yard line to the end zone on a corner route. I could make that throw in high school, but it wasn't going to look like that. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't going to be like a whoom. My ball was about to be the top of the goalposts and come down. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was going to have to go way up there and come down. He's throwing these with, like, they're getting up and down quick.
Yes.
They get up and down in a hurry. And the reason that matters is because if I was making that throw in high school, yeah, my guy's going to be there to catch it. But you know who else is going to have a shot to be there?
The
that
defense.
corner is going to have a shot to get up underneath there. The safety's going to have time to get over. the way he throws, just ripping that ball off the way he does, that sucker gets up and down. Unless you're already in coverage, you have no chance.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it. And, he understands ball placement. Consistency with ball placement, something he's got to worry about. And highlight films, it looks fine. But when you watch game film, you see that there's definitely some things to work on. Here's another example where if you kind of watch him throw, he gets a little too much onto that front foot. And you see how he's not able to complete the throwing motion and the ball sail. It's just a second behind or a step behind. Ends up working out there, but that's something he's have to work on. This is a nice ball right here. A little bit more off his back foot. See a little bit better weight distribution here. And almost like when he throws off his back foot, guys, it forces him to drive the ball more. Because he has to be a little bit more off that back foot. Like here, this is another example. A little bit better drive off that back foot. He's throwing off his back foot, like Vince said, but this is a rope. This is a shot. Just bam, 20-yard out like it's nothing. Vince, how many sophomores in high school do you see throw 20-yard outs like it's nothing?
Not around here.
Exactly. And not around a lot of places. But look at this throw. This is a quicker throw, but he's all front foot and it doesn't come out with any zip. See that?
Right.
And it's a step behind.
Right. And it closes it off. It's not an accurate throw. And that's what I say, that can be fixed, though. That can be fixed in one offseason with a good quarterback coach. And I think Notre Dame's got a pretty good quarterback coach. If he can turn Desmond Ridder into a third-round NFL draft pick, he can turn Teddy Jarrard into a top 10 NFL draft pick, okay? The tools are certainly there. I think this is a game winner. This is a playoff game winner here.
Yeah, 6 overtimes.
Yeah, blown coverage, but he sees it, and he gets it out there accurately. Boom, touchdown, ball game. Yeah. He said something to Sean Davis in an interview. He was asking about a game, and he basically said something like, look, I do my job. I go out there and I win. And you're like, okay, he gets it. He understands the objective. It's not like, hey, I'm throwing for 5,000 yards. It's like, look, my job is to win games. However, whatever I got to do to win games, I'm going to win games. And you hear that from him, like, okay, I like this kid a little bit. He's got some swagger to him, but he doesn't have that arrogant swagger to him. And that's something I like about it. But as you see, guys, there's a lot his game needs to work on technically from the lower body. If you watch game film, he doesn't go past his first, second read a whole lot. When he reads the defense the best is when he's on the run. That's when you see him scanning. Within the system, the coaches did a nice job of 1-2, bam, get the ball out. And that's why he's got a high completion rate. He's got to improve his ball placement. He's got to improve, his footwork and things like that. But man, the tools are impressive, fellas. I mean, the tools are impressive. When that stuff improves, he's going to be a baller. And so a lot of people, you hear my criticisms of he's got to improve this, he's got to improve this. He's not as good as what Teddy Houston is or Peyton Houston is right now, et cetera, et cetera. That's a fact. I don't think that's even debatable. But Notre Dame is not recruiting quarterbacks based on who's the best sophomore in high school. For them, it's what's the potential, what's the production potential, what's the play potential, what's the leadership potential, what's the skill set gonna look like in 2 years. That's why they loved Teddy Jarrard. Not that he's throwing for 4,500 yards and running for 600 more yards and accounting for 70 touchdowns right now. It's that this kid still has 2 years of high school left. When he's done here and then with some work and some tweak this, tweak that, this kid's going to have a chance to be a really good player. So that's why I say right now, on my system, he's a top 100 player. He's kind of bottom of the top 100 for me right now based on certain things. The upside is 4.5 star, which is that of about a top 50 to 75 player. He's top 50. But if he shows the improvement in the fall that he already started to show this spring and summer at workouts, because I don't change grades because of what a kid does at a camp unless it's specific to athleticism. That's the only time so I adjusted Sullivan Garvin's grade because of what he did at Irish Invasion, because my questions for him were foot quickness and agility, change of direction. So when he answered that, okay, I'll adjust it. But if Teddy does carry what we've seen from him this summer into the fall, he jumps up into that top 50 category and the upside goes up to 5-star. He's got 5-star arm talent. I just need to see the other stuff kind of come along with it and the potential to get there. So there's a lot to like about this kid. And I love the fact that he's transferring to a tougher school football-wise. He's challenging himself. and he didn't go to like IMG or like some bigger private school. He's going to the local public school, and I think it's going to be good for him. He's going to face better players every day in practice. He's going to face better players every Saturday, or every Friday, I should say, and I think it's going to help him become a much better football player. So some of the things that maybe he could get away with at the other place, he won't be able to get away with now, which is a good thing, because that means like, okay, I gotta see it, I gotta adjust it. That's why it's like the point I made about CJ Carr's interception in the spring game. I had no problem with the interception. I want him to see that, hey, that's not a throw you can make, and now it's out of your system and you learn from it, and what could I have done differently, and you move on. So and he's got a little bit of that, he's got a little bit of that, some of that CJ carries himself a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And Teddy's got some of that. You know what I mean? Just watch him talk, you watch him play. He's got a little bit of that swagger that you want, that, hey, I'm really good at this, and I can, it's my job to go get the ball where it needs to get to and make plays and lead this team to wins. And you like to watch the kid play. And thing is, guys, I keep saying it again, if you think that was impressive, wait till you see his footwork improve. Wait till you see him grow into that frame. Wait till you see him start to fill out. Like, he's a good player now, but the tools are that of an elite player. The rank, Rivals jumped him up to number 52. I'm fine with that, because they're basing it off of what he did at a camp. That's okay. I need to see it in game film, but if he does in game film what I think he's going to do based off what we saw on the summer stuff, then his ranking will go up.
So that begs the question, gentlemen, since this is the third commitment in the 27 class, what's next? We like to talk about what's next and all of that. And so what's next after they nailed down their quarterback here?
Well, Trev, you kind of talked about it earlier, man. Like, you're trying to get some studs at receiver in this class. Quentin Burrell and Julius Jones Jr., and you're still trying to recruit Jameer Brown, who's committed to Ohio State. You'd love to be able to have a shot at Munchin Sales, who right now is not really giving Notre Dame a whole lot of love right now. People think he's an Indiana kid, so that he must like Notre Dame. Not really. He's a kid that is a little bit more focused on some of the Southern schools right now, but there's some big time players it's a really good receiver class. Asani Gales is a talented player that Notre Dame has offered. You've got Khalil Taylor, who's a Penn State commit that Notre Dame has offered. Matthew Gregory, Quentin Burrell. I mentioned Julius Jones Jr. There's some very talented receivers in the class, and it's also a very good tight end class in 2027. Notre Dame had like 6 of their offered tight ends at Irish Invasion. Grant Haviland is a kid that they like a lot. You've got Seneca Driver, Titus Hawk. I want to make sure I don't leave anybody off. Luke Brewer, Jack Brown, Brock Williams from Illinois. Those are all big-time tight ends that the staff is already on. There's some big-time offensive tackles they're already after. Kennedy Brown, who's a 5-star. Mark Matthews they're after. Cameron Wagner from Illinois, just to name a few. And then, of course, there's some big-time running backs. Amir Brown, who I absolutely love, from North Carolina. You talk about Keemon Spell from Pennsylvania, who still – he shut down his recruitment, but he still talks to Notre Dame. So that's obviously a good thing. But that might be a hard one. But if you get Keemon Spell, great. If you get Amir Brown, great. But having him in the class this early, fellas, number one, allows you to start looking at the 28 quarterback class, which is loaded. I don't think they're going to take as long with 28 to offer some kids as they do with 27. But this is hopefully the foundation of landing another elite offensive class, which I think they did in the 26 class. I think they have an elite running back class. I think they have one of the 10 best receiver classes in the country. They have arguably the best tight end class. I think them and Georgia are battling for the number 1 tight end class, in my opinion. I think Notre Dame and A&M are battling for the number 1 running back class in the country. You've obviously got a very talented quarterback in the 26 class as well, in Noah Grubbs. And then, of course, you landed a really good offensive line class. So 26 class, outstanding. Now coming into 27, you need to land another one, just like it, if not better, at certain spots. And that's what getting a kid like this early is going to really help with that. And then getting him and Grubbs back to back also helps too, because kids, Teddy Jarrard's going to be the quarterback for these kids, but they're going to still have an eye on what's ahead of them, what's already there. They'll be watching CJ or Kenny. They'll be watching, Blake Hebert. They'll be watching Oak Grubbs. And then now you've got their quarterback. I think it helps a ton. So when you talk about what's next, it's not so much about quarterback because they've got their quarterback. Now it's about, okay, what impact will landing this quarterback have on the class as a whole? And you hope that landing him, because you landed him around, I think, about a month later than you landed CJ Carr, because I believe CJ committed in June of his end of his sophomore year.
After his sophomore year.
Yeah, CJ committed on, let me find it here. When did CJ commit? Give me a second. I'm going to go to high school. He committed on June 9th is when. So about a little over a month after CJ committed, you get him. And we saw the impact that CJ had on that class.
Big time.
Offensively and defensively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we talked to defensive players talking about how, man, CJ Carr, that's my dude. I mean, guys, I'll just be straight with you. There's a big-time commit that Notre Dame got in the 25 defensive class whose dad told me CJ Carr had a big role in his recruitment. I said, well, did he know? CJ said, no, but we went to practice and watched CJ Carr throwing the ball around, and we're like, yeah, that guy's really freaking good. You know what I mean? Like, they knew who he was, but then, you get to see him in person, and it's like, okay, Notre Dame's quarterback's going to be pretty good. Defensive players care about that too. They don't want to have to feel like we better win 41 to 40, shootouts, every week, or excuse me, opposite for defensive players. We hope we don't have to win 13 to 10, like ugly games every Saturday, but no, we're going to have an offense who can score too. So I think it helps both sides of the ball.
Well, there you have it. So that is the commitment of 2027. It's so weird to say 2027 still. The third commitment of the 27 class, 4-star quarterback out of Kennesaw, Georgia, Teddy Jarrard, makes it official. He's the number 2 quarterback overall, according to Rivals. So it's a big pickup for Notre Dame. They have their quarterback, and let's see what kind of impact he can have on this 27 class. It should be a lot of fun to kind of keep an eye out. And of course, just stay locked in to Irish Breakdown, and we will bring it all to you throughout the rest of the matriculation of the 27 class and what that's going to look like. They have about 25 more commits to go. So should be a lot of fun to keep an eye on this class, but they have their quarterback. Teddy Jarrard is Irish, chose the Irish over big-time schools like Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia. There was a lot of big-time hats on that table, but he picked up the one that had the interlocking ND on it. So good stuff for Notre Dame. Excited about this kid. And, we'll see what happens. Very excited to watch his junior and senior film, that's for sure. But he's raw, but he's got some talent, man. He can sling it. So a lot of fun. Really excited to see how this kid matures and does his thing in high school. But so there you have it. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and, of course, jump on the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian dropped some major intel yesterday on a bit of the offense going into fall camp, and there's more where that came from. So you're definitely going to want to check that out, but that's only for premium message board subscribers. So you got to get over there at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, gentlemen. So part 2 of today's show is actually going to be a fun one. It's something a little bit different than we've done in the past. And ESPN recently put out an article basically called "What If," and they took a look at a bunch of the teams that are vying for a national championship in 2025, and they came up with what ifs. So, like, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and what if this happens? And so we're going to kind of break that down. We're going to talk about Notre Dame first in this next segment, and we're going to go into some detail about the 3 what ifs that this writer had for Notre Dame. We're going to break those down, and then in the next part of the show, we are going to talk about the other schools that were written about in this article, and we're going to go through their what ifs. And so take a bit of a larger college football view at things. So we're going to focus on Notre Dame first, and then we're going to go back and we are going to look at the rest of the teams that were in this article. So something kind of fun, something we haven't done before, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's just jump into this thing. So this is an article, and I want to give credit where credit is due. Bill Connolly wrote this article. It's over on ESPN. It's a good read. we're going to break it down for you. So you don't even have to go over there. We're going to tell you kind of how things went and what that looks like. But there are some what ifs for Notre Dame. And basically, if they can answer these in a positive way, then Notre Dame is a national championship contender, essentially. Is that basically?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of like, hey, here's the top teams in the country. For these teams to reach their full potential, they need to, these three questions will be, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens. And look, I give ESPN a very hard time, and I definitely give Bill Connolly a very hard time because I think the SP Plus is ridiculous.
He references it a lot in this article.
I get that, but that's not what he can't. There's no formula to look at the teams and say these are the three question marks. He had to break down the teams and come up with it. And Trevor and I were talking about this before the show. I thought he did a really nice job with this. Like, there's some things. Okay, I would have this. I would have that. There's things that you agree or disagree with, but like, it's very well researched, very well written. Yeah. It was stuff that like there was nothing on there that I was like, what is he talking about with Notre Dame or anybody else? It was very well done. And so, like I think Trev, you said it to me before the show, credit where credit is due. This is really good. And I hammer ESPN because they deserve it, not because it's fun or I enjoy it. It's because they deserve it. But when they do something really well produced, then they should get credit for that too. And that's where this came from. But it also sparked, because it was well written, it sparked some interesting conversation because there are ifs for Notre Dame. And I want to talk about the three he came up with, but then also maybe some other things that we think are there. And I didn't notice him talking a lot about injuries. So I think some things are just assumed. Obviously for everybody, it's, you got to stay healthy and all that kind of stuff. But you guys ready to kind of kick off the first one?
Absolutely.
He talked about, this is a no-brainer. I mean,
yes, it is.
This is like, okay. I mean, look, what is CJ Carr going to do?
Right.
I mean, that's really the big thing. And I think when you look at this season, it makes sense for someone to say, hey, look, if you're talking about Notre Dame, the first thing you're going to talk about is their quarterback. I totally get that. And then kind of looking at what he said specifically, just to give you guys a little bit of a sense of it, Notre Dame had three ifs. It says if CJ Carr is ready. And basically he talks about, decent size, good arm. This is a weird comment. He isn't the third down bowling ball that Riley Leonard proved to be, but he could offset that with steadier passing. And say it with me now, we won't know he's ready for the job till he proves it. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, the writing part of that was like a little wonky, but
the point is still, the point is still fact.
A big part of it. We say all the time, Vince, you and I have been saying it for years. Notre Dame can't compete for a championship without a quarterback that can be a playmaker. You can be a playmaker in different ways. There's the way Riley Leonard did it.
Right.
There's the way Jimmy Clausen did it. There's the way that Brady Quinn did it. There's the way that Everett Golson did it. It's been different. There's the way Ian Book did it. They all had their moments of being playmakers to varying degrees of greatness, but you need that. You're not going to go win a championship with, Pat Dillingham. You're just not. And so quarterback is very important for Notre Dame. I think the overall talent level has raised to where the quarterback, he doesn't have to be Jameis Winston from 2013 for them to win it, but it would help if he was that, but I think that's a great point. Is CJ Carr ready? Is he ready for the limelight? Is he ready to take over? And he does say, if he isn't sophomore Kenny Minch, he better be. And I think that was a nice little late throw in that also is impactful. Like, one of these two kids has to be ready for prime time. And I just, Notre Dame could be a playoff team if these guys are just kind of average, but they're not going to be a title contender if these guys are just average.
Well, we've seen it before. We've seen Notre Dame with an excellent run game and a good run blocking offensive line that make a run to the playoffs, or they finish a season, 11-1 and go to a bowl game. And, we've seen it. Quarterback is the difference maker. We've seen Notre Dame, maybe not with quite the dynamic running ability and combination of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, but we've seen this program have really good running backs before in the past that they could lean on and make it to the playoffs. But what was the difference maker in 2018 when they got to the playoffs against Clemson? Quarterback play took a back seat to the other teams in the postseason.
Let's just say it again. 4 quarterbacks in the playoffs in 2018. Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, and Ian Book. You can love Ian Book all you want, but one of these things is not like the other. 2 years later, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Ian Book. Again, one of these is not like the other. And what was unique about last year is you didn't have those elite big-time quarterbacks for those other teams. And you could argue that Notre Dame had the best playmaker quarterback of anybody in the playoff, and lo and behold, or of the Final Four, and lo and behold, Notre Dame gets into the championship game, plays for the championship. It's not a coincidence.
No, not at all. Quarterback is going to be the difference maker for this program this year. Done in a different light than what it was last year, but again, this sticks to the common theme. This is a well thought out article, specifically in the Notre Dame end of it. And yes, I know it doesn't take a whole lot to say who's the starting quarterback at Notre Dame. They're going to have a big impact on the season. But based on what we've seen in years past, it's very true. And I do appreciate that he threw in Kenny Minchie at the end of it as well. Wished it was more open of, because we're going to talk about it when we get to the Alabama portion. But they brought up the fact that in the headline of Alabama's, one of their questions is Ty Simpson or anyone needs to kind of be ready for their moment. It's kind of the situation that Notre Dame is in as well. But I understand going with the name CJ Carr, get you more clicks. I get it. But no, it's very true. It's very, very true.
Quarterback is going to be make or break the difference for this team, right? If they have elite quarterback play, they're going to be running into the national championship hunt. If they have average quarterback play, I still think this team, like you said, is good enough to go to the playoff, but they're probably not going to do a whole lot once they get there. And so, we were asked yesterday, does a 10-2 Notre Dame team make the playoff? Obviously, there are a lot of other surrounding circumstances that could push that to a yes or a no. Overall, I said probably. Yeah, probably. But you're also probably going to be on the road someplace, in the first round, fighting for your life, right? So there's a difference. And I think it does come down to a myriad of other things. It comes down to quarterback play. And so I think this is, while maybe the most obvious what if, it's absolutely the most important what if, in my opinion. So I think that he nailed it on this one. He nailed it right on the head. The second what if question that was in this article is, if the new receiving core is better than the old, what say you on that one, Brian?
Very fair. Look, I think it not only needs to be better, I think it needs to be a lot better. And the reason I say that is, look, last year Notre Dame made the title game with a solid receiving core, and it was solid.
Yeah.
And you had some guys step up in the postseason. Jordan Faison was excellent in the first 2 rounds. Jaden Greathouse was special in the second 2 rounds. But the thing that we have to understand as Notre Dame fans is what worked last year doesn't necessarily work all the time. Notre Dame was good enough to get to the title game last year with certain things, but would that have been good enough to get there in 2020? Would that have been good enough to get there in 2021, 2018? That's a different conversation to have. If you want to have more of a sort of a foolproof type of program where you don't have to rely on it being a down year of college football, which I have no problem saying. We said that before the season. I can't then go back and revert and say, well, I was just kidding because Notre Dame made the championship game, so it actually was a great year. All these teams could have beat Bama in 2020. No, it was a down year. Notre Dame took advantage, which is why a flawed Notre Dame team with a lot of injuries was able to overcome with great coaching, heart, leadership, toughness, and talent, and still get to the title game.
I don't know if people believed us when we were talking in the preseason about how this was a great opportunity for Notre Dame.
Yes.
Because of the parity and the kind of the overall down year that college football was going to have. I don't think people necessarily believed us, but we were talking about that around this time last year.
Mm-hmm. And Notre Dame took advantage. Now, they had to overcome a lot to get there, and that's what made last season so impressive. You lose your starting center, you lose your starting left tackle, you lose your first and second string Viper by the end of the third game, you lose your All-American cornerback. You have a kid that steps up and plays great football at D tackle for the first 5 games. He's gone. You lose your All-American defensive tackle in the first round of the playoffs. So you didn't have to beat Georgia and Penn State without him. It just was like one thing after another. and they still were able to overcome that and get where they got to. But the point is, you can't just assume that's the recipe for it every year. And hey, guys, guess what? You didn't win a title. At the end of the day, you still have to go out and improve and get better. And in order to do that, you have to look at the areas where were we good enough to win a championship and where weren't we on a consistent basis, and we got to improve there. And that's why they went out and got Malachi Fields. It's why they went out and got Will Pauling. It's why, they hired Mike Brown, who's considered one of the better teachers and at the position in the game. And so this position has to not only get better, but I think if Notre Dame's going to be the team that goes and wins it, you need it even more because of the quality of competition. But number two, you don't have Riley Leonard at quarterback anymore. You can't just put it on his shoulders and his legs to win it. You've got quarterbacks, whether it's Kenny or CJ, because I want to look, I know we all talk about Kenny's athleticism and get him a sub package. Kenny Minchie is not a running quarterback. He is an athletic passing quarterback. He gives you some dual threat ability, but it's not Riley Leonard. He is a passing first quarterback. CJ Carr is a passing first quarterback. So in that scenario, you need receivers that can get open, make plays, win one-on-ones, dominate in the boundary, win in space, make plays down the field. You need more of that. And so if this team is going to be to that level, I do think that 1 and 2 go together. Is these quarterbacks ready? Hey, guys, and I mean, Bill Connolly says it well. He's not Riley Leonard. I thought, well, he didn't say it well. He said it clunkily, but the point is very valid.
It's a bowling
He's
ball.
not Riley Leonard. You are going to add more to the pass game, but if you're adding more if you're relying more on the pass game, but you don't have better pass catchers, that's going to be a bit of a problem, as we saw in 2023, which I think the receivers caught a little bit too much flack in 2023, but there were plenty of moments where they weren't good enough. And that when you had Sam Hartman at quarterback, it killed you. Your pass protection wasn't good enough. And with Sam Hartman at quarterback, it killed you. With Riley Leonard at quarterback, you could overcome it. You won't have that this year.
No, you're not beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl if you pass for 80 yards this year. Just not. Because of the makeup of various other things. You don't have Riley Leonard to then go and bail you out in certain situations. You're going to have a quarterback with a skill set that can bail you out in different ways. It'll be passing the ball vertically, pushing the ball vertically down the field, but it comes down to consistency around wide receiver play. In moments in 23 and in 24 is, hey, do you remember that wide receiver's performance that one time, that one game, in that one half? He was electric. Now we just have to see it for the other 11 games. And as long as this receiving core can be and have the impact that we believe that they can, week in and week out, and it could be a different person. It's not like 2019 where you just know it's going to be Chase Claypool every Saturday when given the opportunity. You know what I mean? It's not like in 2019 and Georgia, when they were down against Georgia and Athens, they kind of they didn't really look his way until it was a little bit too late in that game. But I've been very adamant and very consistent that this year Notre Dame's receiving core, it could be somebody different, but the unit as a whole has to be impactful every single week. And I'm not going to take too much light into what they do against Miami of Ohio. Yes, I understand Bo Collins caught a 38-yard touchdown pass against Miami of Ohio. I would like to see that against the more meaningful games on their schedule. That's what, against Miami, Florida. You know, I mean,
did you just read my lips?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, that's because I realized I had myself muted, and I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't hear that. And Trevor goes, exactly, Miami, Florida. Well done, dude. Well done.
Thank you. But that's what 2023 was. Thank you. That's what 2023 was. It was, they looked electric against Tennessee State and Central Michigan, but then
even NC State to a degree, USC.
Yeah. But then you get up against Ohio State.
Defense
you go up against Clemson. Exactly. So more consistent week in and week out, especially in the big moments. If they can carry over the momentum that they had in the postseason, to your point, Brian, about Jordan Faison's performance in the first 2 games and then Jaden Greathouse's performance in the final 2 games, if the unit as a whole can emulate that over the course of a season, then that what if is going to be answered pretty quickly.
I like this wide receiving core. I think that there's a lot of talent there. I feel like I've fallen into the trap of being excited about the wide receiving core in the preseason for the past few years.
Yep.
And it's kind of burnt me a little bit. You know what I mean?
Like so when I say, but this year's different.
Right. Yes. I mean, and it has to be. Look, that's why this is a good what if, though, right? Because they do need to be better as a whole. And I think they need to be better at the top as well. And whoever that, I don't care who the best wide receiver is on this team. I don't care who the alpha becomes. You know, you've got people that think that Greathouse is going to be the alpha. You got people that think that Fields is going to be the alpha. My opinion on that is, okay, as long as one of them does it, I don't care. Or both of them could do it. That would be okay too. So it doesn't matter to me who it is. It doesn't matter how it looks, as long as they get what they need to out of the wide receiving core. That's the most important thing to me. And look, the quarterback play goes a long way to that. We get it. You know, Riley Leonard is not necessarily a pass first guy, and that's not the way his game played out last year, and that's fine. The offense is going to look different this year, plain and simple, right? I mean, it just is. And so people need to get used to that. The wide receivers are going to have a lot to say about that. They're going to be forced into situations where they're either going to be really good or it's going to be obvious that the wide receiving core isn't where it needs to be. Like, that's how I feel about this wide receiving core. So, yeah, they need to be better than they were last year. There's no doubt about it. And I think they will be. I think this what if will be answered in a positive way, but it's still a what if going into the year. And I think this is a good what if for this offense. And I'm excited to watch them for sure.
I think the difference between this situation and past situations, and why I think you're starting to see Notre Dame even getting more national love at receiver. I mean, we're seeing people rank their receivers in the top 10 units. One magazine didn't rank him in the top 10, but they had their two best receivers ranked 9th and 16th in the top 20 nationally at receiver when you look at Lindy's. The reason is because the difference between this receiving core and past receiving core. So, like, for example, last year, it was if Bo Collins can be better than he was at Clemson, if Jaden Harrison can show off the speed and become the playmaker, if Chris Mitchell can make the transition to the group of Power 5 level. In 23, it was if Tobias Merriweather can break out, if Chris Tyree can make the transition from running back to receiver, if the freshman class can help you out. I say those things because if in 2022, if Lorenzo Styles can break out, if Deion Colsey can break out, if Braden Lindsey can be healthy for a full year, well, only one of those three things happened. Braden Lindsey was healthy for a full year and was pretty good. And I would have loved to have seen, like, I talk about we always say, well, if you could have this great player, well, if you don't let me give me a great player, if you just let me have 2022 version of Braden Lindsey on this team, I'm pretty fired up.
Yeah, he was on a mission that year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is this. Those ifs were all about people doing things that we hadn't seen them do yet. I think the reason there's more optimism about this is, well, I just need Jaden Greathouse to keep being the dude he was in the postseason. I just need Malachi Fields to do what he's already done at the Power 5 level for 2 seasons. I just need Will Paulding to do what he did at Wisconsin 2 years ago. Like, that's it. Just do what you've already done at the Power 4 level. And I think that's why there's a greater sense of optimism that this is different, is because it's not about, we're not looking for breakouts. We're just looking for, dude, just keep doing what you're doing. And I think that's what does make it a little bit different. Of course, we do need to see it.
Sure.
But that's what I think makes it a little bit different, is that there's more proven commodities here. If 2021, if Kevin Austin breaks out.
Sure.
You know, if Javon McKinley can break out, if Ben Skoranek can take his play to another level. Well, Javon did break out. Ben, I don't know, he took his play to another level. He was healthy and was at least as good as he was in Northwestern. It was a solid football player. But the reason that there's the receiver play was up and down is because there were so many ifs going into each season.
Yeah.
And your entire 2021 pass game success was dependent upon Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin playing well. When Kevin Austin didn't play well, they didn't throw the ball very well. You're not in that. If you want to put all your attention on stopping Malachi Fields, well, what's your game plan for also stopping Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison and Will Paulding and guys? That's what makes this a little bit different. But it is a very legitimate thing to say that Notre Dame reaching their full potential requires their receivers to be better than what they were a year ago. Like, that's a very fair thing to say.
I will go out on a limb here, and look, we get one full practice that has been out there for fall camp. I think when we do a show on next Thursday, when we do our show talking about practice, we're going to talk about wide receivers. Because when we get to see a practice where there's no pads and, that kind of a thing, one thing that will stand out are skill positions. And they will throw the ball around. And I don't care who the quarterback is, who's throwing on the football. I think we're going to have a nice discussion, Brian, about what we see from the wide receiver room. That's just, again, there's only so much you can see at those kinds of practices. But at the same time, I have a feeling we're going to have something to say about the wide receiving room. And it's probably going to be positive.
Well, the good news is if they are playing well in fall camp, we'll know it's legit because of who they're going against. And there were some years like, man, these receivers look pretty good. And then you found out in the season, like, oh no, the secondary is not very good.
I feel like that is there was no what if the secondary is, where they need to be in this article.
Right.
I feel like we know that.
If they'd have put that there, we'd be having a very different conversation about the quality of this article.
Yes.
Is Notre Dame good enough in the secondary? Delete. You're an idiot.
I was about to say, we would still be talking about the what if article. It
So
wouldn't
I said
be like
very
this.
differently.
Yes.
You know nothing. Blanks, blankety blank blanks. Yeah, it would not be good. It would not be good.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
But that's good, though. It's like I think about how much improvement we saw from the defense in 2017. And Mike Elko would say, like, a big part of the improvement is that we have to defend this offense every day.
Yeah.
We have to go against this offensive line every day in practice. So by the time we get to Saturday, it's like, phew, finally get a day off from getting destroyed in practice. You know what I mean? It's like it was I think that makes you better. I mean, you look at Pete Carroll, when he was at USC, would always talk about, like, dude, the hardest part of being at USC, his players always talk about it. The hardest thing for us is going against each other in practice, because he was always doing good on good. Even during game week, he'd have good on good periods. So by the time you get to Saturday, it's like, well, that's nothing. Like, I've been going against Leonard Moore in one-on-ones all week. Like, with all due respect to your 5'11" corner, this ain't nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna wear you out.
Right.
So. That's where I agree with you, Vince. I tend to agree that I think the proven nature of it, the fact that they are being challenged the way they are, gives me optimism that they're gonna be better than maybe some people expect.
Speaking of the defense, since we were talking about the secondary, the final what if for Notre Dame in this particular article was if the new defensive coordinator clears the bar. And I think that is a legitimate what if for this team. He went into some detail about how he didn't believe that the Al Golden hire was a good one and admitted that he was wrong.
Which we have as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, not that we thought it was a bad hire. It was like,
right.
I don't know. Like,
it was
I have some questions. The guy hasn't called a defense in like almost 20 years. You know, it's like he's been in the NFL. Like, he was the running backs coach like 5 years ago in the NFL. Like, it could work out. I don't know. It's a gamble.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I didn't think he took it as it was a bad hire. He said it wasn't particularly creative or an inspiring move. And I think that was fair to say.
Yeah. And he also says that about this.
And he said, I love the comment, shows what we know. I love that legitimate humility you're showing there. Because, like, we said the same thing, like, well, glad we got that one wrong. Because we did. Got that one wrong.
Yep.
I mean, you could say you didn't get it wrong because you didn't say it was a bad hire, but I wasn't fired up about it.
Right.
I was a whole lot more bummed when he left than I was excited when he got hired.
Oh, absolutely. And we saw it coming a mile away too when he was leaving, and it's just like, no. Yeah. 100%. But Chris Ash coming in as the new defensive coordinator. We chatted about this last night.
Stand on business, baby. I love it. But I think that plays into the if, though. That comment does play into the if.
100%. And we talked about this last night. It's like, okay, we don't know necessarily what Chris Ash is going to do with this defense, but I like the situation that he's in because he's not really going to have to worry about the Jimmies and Joes. He just needs to worry about the X's and O's. You know what I mean? So he is in a situation where, okay, we're all fans, analysts, whatever. We're all going to be comparing him to Al Golden. And what does that look like in game one? We won't really know the answer to that until we see games and what the in-game situation looks like.
I think this is probably, of the three, the one that I want to get your thoughts on this, Trev. Of the three, this is the one that I think is the one that I have the biggest if on. Like if I was ranking them and when I mean if, I mean the certainty with which I think the if will be answered. CJ Carr is the quarterback is the biggest if as far as importance you could argue, but it's not the one is at the top of my list of the ones I have the least confidence in. I have a great deal of confidence that the starting quarterback is going to be good because if CJ starts, I think he's going to be really good. If Kenny somehow beats CJ out, like, how good do you have to be to do that? So, like, I'm not worried about the quarterback position. I'm honestly not worried about the receiver position. This is one that is a little bit to me, like they're going to be good on defense because of the talent, but good doesn't win you 3 to 4 playoff games, especially with a redshirt freshman first-year starter quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is the what if that I'm the least apt to answer. Yeah, because I can come up with reasons why I'm confident in CJ Carr. I can come up with reasons like we listed out why we're confident in this receiving core. And outside of the, I guess as Vince would like to say, the hay being in the barn, I've been looking for a reason to bring that up in a show. I loved when you said that. I've been looking for a reason. But outside of having all of the skilled talent that they have on defense, how it's going to look is we're going to start finding it out together on August 31st and then throughout the regular season. We get some questions sometimes, buy-sell holds or mailbags, and they are valid questions. I don't want to knock the questions that we receive, but it's, what do you think Chris Ash is going to do on game day if this happens? And what is his play style going to be on game? I wish I had the answer, because then that would make this what if not as high up on the list for me as it is currently. And we're just going to have to kind of ride it out together and see what that starts to look like. And it's going to start on August 31st. Then we're going to learn some new things on September 13th. And then so on and so forth, to where we're going to have we're going to have a stronger idea of what that's going to look like come the postseason. But it's a very similar spot that we were all in 2022. I wasn't doing this with Irish Breakdown in 22, but I had a lot of the same reservations about Al Golden. I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know how he's going to be on game day. I don't know how he's going to respond to certain situations or what his halftime adjustments are going to be. And it's hard to go based off of previous sample size, Chris Ash and Al Golden, for different reasons. Al Golden, because he hadn't done it on the defensive side of the ball in college in 2 decades. And then with Chris Ash, it's like, okay, well, the last time we saw him be a collegiate defensive coordinator, it did not go well.
Yeah.
But there's reasons for that. And so
you just hope those reasons are valid.
Exactly.
Like we've talked about. But he hasn't had a good defense in a decade.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, because he talked about how he bombed out at Rutgers, and he did, but I don't care about that. I don't care what a guy does as a head coach. It just doesn't really bother me. I care what a guy does as a coordinator.
Yep.
And that's the thing we're going to have to learn about Chris Ash. But yeah, that and my if isn't so much of I think it's bad. I think he's going to struggle. I think he's going to suck. I don't think he can do this. I don't know. And that is a lot where I was with Al Golden. It takes a lot of projection and just honestly blind trust in Marcus Freeman to say, no, they're going to be fine on defense. And I'm not good at the blind trust thing. But I do think that the Al Golden hire gives Marcus Freeman a little bit of a, let's see how it goes. That's why I haven't hammered the Chris Ash hire a whole lot. I said what I said at the beginning, but I've been open-minded, and I saw some good things in the spring. His teaching method is not like what we've heard, and I'm very careful to base that off of what we saw in person, because Vince, you remember how it was going to watch Brian Van Gordon in practice. He was calm, didn't yell, but then you'd walk by practice when we were on our way to so it used to be like, so they'd have practice where they did out, but it was always outdoors before the indoor facility. So we'd have a press conference after practice, and you'd park down by the soccer field, baseball fields, and you'd walk by. Then I'd usually back then would get there pretty early when I went to press conferences, and you'd hear them practicing, and you'd hear some things Brian Van Gordon would say, and you're like, oh my God, if a coach said that to me, like I might have to punch him in his face. Like there's just principles involved in this one. You know what I mean? But when we were there, totally different guy. The reason that I'm believing that what we saw from Chris Ash is what is there is because of the feedback I get from people that have always been really honest with me in the past about things like this. People who don't really have a reason to not be honest with me about it. And they're like, no, the kids love him. And that was one of the big concerns I had about Chris Ash is I didn't always hear that he got along great with his players at Ohio State. They respected his football knowledge, but not maybe how he embraced. And you heard that at Rutgers, and you heard that a little bit. But now we're hearing like, no, the kids love him. He treats them like adults. He teaches. It's a focus on. You're like, okay, cool. Maybe the time in the NFL did impact him positively in the way that it did Al Golden. And then also, Vince, you know me, I'm a big fan of build something that you can hang your hat on first, then add to it. And that's what we saw him do this spring. So in that regard, so far so good. But none of that matters until you, like you guys said, how does he call plays in games?
Right.
How is he one step ahead of the offense, which Al Golden always seemed to be in a lot of games. And that's what made the title game so confusing was like, wait a minute.
What is happening?
Yeah. Because he was always so one step ahead of, it seemed, of the other team. And he was great at adjustments.
Yes. I was just going to say that.
And like, you know, like the halftime adjustments against Penn State. Look, Andy Kotelnicki out-coached Al Golden in the first 2 quarters of that game. Flat out-coached Al Golden. Al Golden out-coached Andy Kotelnicki. And when I say that, it's the staffs as well, out-coached the Penn State coaches in the second half, which is why Notre Dame came back and won. Just like I felt that Tom Allen out-coached Mike Denbrock in the first half of that game. But Mike Denbrock out-coached Tom Allen in the second half. That's part of being a great coach. What kind of adjustments is Chris Ash going to make? Some people say, oh, second half adjustments don't matter. Yeah, they kind of do. Are they what people make them out to be sometimes? No, not really. Because if your game plan is just toast, you're not putting a new game plan in at halftime. You're tweaking. You're making adjustments. You're putting in an emphasis. Hey, we only thought we were going to do this 20% of the time, but now we're going to do it 60% of the time. They're important, and the semifinal game showed that. But those are the things we have to learn about Chris Ash. But I will say what I have heard so far of what we can evaluate so far is positive. And I'm happy about. Now we just got to see him take that next step. And can he do it? I don't know. So those are the 3 of those ifs, guys. I want to talk before we move on to the national stuff. What are some things that, like, do you think that all 3 of these should have been the ifs? And if you were to remove one, what would you replace it with?
Oh, so we can't add. We have to replace, huh?
Well, yeah, because the way that it worked is there was teams that had 2 ifs, there were teams that had 3 ifs, and then there's teams with 4 ifs.
Right.
So so you could add one. You'd say, you know what? I'd have bumped them down to that 4 ifs category. So if you want to do that, you can. But if you're going to keep them in the 3 ifs, what would be the one that you replace? I'll start. Give you guys an example.
Okay.
I understand where they're coming from with the receiver if. It's just not a big if for me because it's proven. It's not, I hope this guy who was good at Liberty or FIU or Troy is going to be able to do that at this level.
Marshall.
Right. I hope that this guy who was a solid player here can be a dude for us here, along with our relatively still unproven freshmen. I mean, Jaden Greathouse showed flashes as a freshman. Faison showed flashes, but they hadn't put it together for a full season. And so this is different. It's not a big if for me. I honestly would have an if. My big if would be, can the offensive line stay healthy and improve in pass pro? I would remove the receiver conversation, and I would put that one in there.
That was 100% going to be what I was going to say. And the reason I was going to take out the wide receiver one was because the quarterback and the wide receiver are just too linked for me. You know what I mean? Where I feel like I could have gone with another one that had nothing to do with the quarterback and the wide receiver.
So more focus on the pass game?
Yeah.
Maybe combine them into one in the pass game.
Exactly correct. Yes, that's what I would have done. And then I would have put the O-line pass pro injury health as my one that I would have inserted. Because that's, to me, overall, of all the ifs that could be possible with this team, because of who is going to be quarterback or not going to be, like, whether it's Minchie or Carr, doesn't matter. They're both throw first quarterbacks. We said that earlier. They need to be protected. They're not Riley Leonard. And people who say, do you think the numbers were skewed because, Riley Leonard was this and that? Yeah, to a degree, yes. And so that is a more important if for me, because if they can't get that figured out, then the wide receiver production and whoever the quarterback is, the importance drops a little bit because they can't throw the football. You know what I mean? So that's exactly what the direction that I was thinking to go. And that is my biggest if overall. That would have been my number one, to be perfectly honest with you, would have been O-line, pass pro. That's my number one if. If they can get that figured out, I think everything else falls into place.
What about you, Trev?
Yeah, I would take out receivers. I'm with you guys on that sentiment. When you go back and you read the article, there's a lot of teams that just have trenches, like trenches conversations, and they cover both offense and defense, and I would put that absolutely as my number two. You can make the argument that the offensive line and the defensive line are the two biggest what-ifs on either side of the ball for Notre Dame. And that's an interesting spot to be in when the identity of the program is they want to be O and D-line driven. I think you have to use the most, especially now with the Charles Jagasaw injury, and then Jordan Botelho re-injuring himself, unfortunately, earlier this offseason as well. I think that may be the two position groups where you have to kind of use the most projection of if this player works out, replaces this production, et cetera, then Notre Dame can get back to the stage that they strive to be in. Echo everything that you guys said about the offensive line and pass protection. Just continue to grow as a run blocking team. I mean, honestly, if you just kind of repeat your performance from last season, you're still going to be a pretty darn good run blocking team. Elevate it in certain areas, get more consistent in certain areas. But then on the defensive line, can you generate a pass rush specifically on the edges? Because that was basically just absent last year. I know we, as some people who analyze the team, can say, well, yes, they're getting Bubakar back and Bryce Young's going into year two, but national perspective, which is what this article is, they don't understand that, Bubakar, because of his pass rush efficiency rating, is as what it was last year, and he was on pace to get X amount of hits plus sacks on the quarterback. They don't view it that way. Right. I'm not saying that it's okay that they don't, but they have to cover.
But it's fair. The guy's played 4 games.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you really think about it, he played 3 games this year or 4 games this year because he got hurt against Louisville. So 5. And then, like, a snap at a key moment the year before.
Mm-hmm.
He's really played 5 games. So it's fair.
Yep. So I would replace wide receivers with just overall trench play for Notre Dame, because you see that common, and I know we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, but you see that pretty common throughout some of the other teams that were mentioned. So I would replace the receiver play with those.
I would consider instead of having Chris Ash as a whole, like, it's a little bit too macro for me. I'd have gone a little bit micro and said, can Chris Ash get the run game, the run defense better? So I think when you look at Notre Dame last couple of years, they've been pretty darn good in the secondary and in pass defense. And you've got Mike Mickens coming back. You've got a preseason All-American at corner coming back. You might have the best cornerback duo in the country. They're at least in the conversation. You've got a veteran safety coming back. There's talent there. I think the question is more of, can Chris Ash do the one thing that Al Golden couldn't, which is develop a championship caliber run defense? I'd have gone a little bit more granular on that one, right? A little bit more micro on that one. But the premise is still the same. Is this going to be a good hire? If he is a good hire, part of it will be him improving the run defense. So, but I would have maybe gone a little bit more. I'd have fine-tuned it just a little bit for me. But overall, I don't think he was way off. I think it's very fair to have the 3 that he had.
Yes. Absolutely. Especially from a national standpoint. You know what I mean? Like when you're, I think when it's a national writer, they take more of a macro view than a micro view. You know what I mean?
Well, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
People are skimming through this, and then not everybody's going to know these teams. So you're taking more of a big picture, what's an interesting view. But I think all those things are also fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, no. It's not like he left Leonard Moore off of his, top players returning list.
Oh,
like another ESPN writer did.
Oh,
yeah. So, but no, I thought it was fair. Is there anything else that you would consider kind of looking at from the standpoint of, hey, this is something that's an if, big enough of an if? I think everything else is sort of minor.
Yes.
Who's going to start here? Who's
right.
going to? I think those are the main ones. Vince, I do like what you said though. Is maybe it would have been more, instead of Carr and the receivers, put them into one and be like, look, can you develop an impact pass game with a brand new starting quarterback and a receiving core that has to prove itself? I think it's very fair.
A championship level.
And you're replacing an NFL tight end, a drafted tight end. I think that's a really fair point. Very fair point. I actually like that. That would have been the way that I would go. So, like, if I were doing the 3 ifs, I think what you said, Vince, putting those into one, can the pass game become, good enough to compete for champ? Because we know they're going to run the football.
Right.
It's like I don't have an issue with I'm not concerned about this offensive line from a run blocking standpoint either.
No.
Like we never I don't know if Anthony Knapp and Billy Shrouth and Ashton Craig and Emil Wagner and Sullivan Absher are going to be able to open up run lanes. Guys, I watched them do it all year last year.
Right.
It's like, and that was with Anthony Knapp as a true freshman, and Emil is a first-year starter, and Billy's a first-year starter. I'm not worried about that. Can you protect the quarterback? So I think that would be, and you could even say throw that into that first note. That's part of the pass game thing. You could even go there. But then also the as we talked about, the pass pro part, if you want to put second, then Chris Ash being a legitimate one, but more so harnessed on the run defense.
Love it.
So, if I was going to put an extra one, little tip of the cap to you, Vince, your favorite topic, can you make kicks?
Yeah.
Look, if your schedule's a little tighter, you may have some tougher games where you're going to need your place kicker. And look, whatever the reason why, we all agree. The only reason Mitch Jeter struggled in the regular season last year is because of the injuries.
Yeah. Yep.
We saw what Mitch Jeter is capable of against Texas A&M and in the playoffs.
Correct.
That's who Mitch Jeter was.
When it mattered, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
During that stretch where he's injured, he struggled.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened. Whatever the reason, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, last year you were turning to Zach Yoakum and a guy who literally hadn't kicked in almost a decade, Eric Goyens. Now you're turning to a freshman, but a freshman with a monster leg who was arguably the best kicker in the country. Arguably. He was in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a very underrated move by Notre Dame this offseason. Getting Eric Schmidt late was a very underrated move because now, maybe Marco is the guy you turn to Marcelo is the guy you turn to if Noah Burnett gets hurt or doesn't pan out. But the only way you're turning to Marcelo is if he's better than Eric Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just more confidence overall in that, but that's something that at least because a lot of people say Notre Dame's schedule is tougher this year. Well, if it's going to be tougher this year, then you may have to rely on your field goal kicker to be a little bit more clutch than it was last year in the regular season.
Yeah.
But maybe people don't think about that because they only remember how good he was in the postseason, and against A&M, which is fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fair.
Massive kicks in the postseason. Massive. Okay, so that's going to do it for this part of our review of the ESPN article talking about the what ifs around college football. And we are going to expand our horizons in the next section. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, jump on the boards@irishbreakdown.com. If you weren't with us before, there is some great intel leading into camp on the boards right now. Half of the offensive version is out and published. More to come.
The second part of the offense will come out tonight. Defense will come out this weekend.
So I'm telling you, folks, if you want to be ready for camp, you need to jump on the boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Be a member of the premium message board. It is worth your time. And we've been having some really good discussions about what we want to put on the boards during football season. It's going to be different, and it's going to be the best. So I'm just saying you might want to head over there. Just throwing it out there. So definitely boards.irishbreakdown.com.
I feel like before we move on to the next show, I feel like I have this burning desire to make some sort of Hulk Hogan type of reference because I felt like a part of my childhood died today, guys. Like, honestly, when I heard that Hulk Hogan passed away, people keep talking about it in the chat. It's just like I've been trying to find different ways to fit it in. It just hasn't fit. And I'm not good at impressions, but I'm like, what you gonna do? When Jeremiah Love comes running down on you, like I feel like what was it? Like I want to do something to shout out to Hulk Hogan, but
rip.
Yeah, I'm not doing that, man. This is a brand new IB shirt. I'm not doing that. Unless I'd be embarrassing myself, it wouldn't work. Yeah, wouldn't work. But yeah, I felt like a part of my childhood died today, man. Like, because I still remember me and my dad getting the pay-per-view WrestleMania 3 when Hulk Hogan slammed Andre the Giant. So yeah. Very, 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 very big bummer, but I felt, at least I see a lot of people in the chat saying that. That's why I kind of brought it up. But yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer finding out right before the show.
I know, right?
Yeah.
71. How is Hulk Hogan 71? First of all, that just
feels super old.
That ages all of us.
Yes, it does.
Trevor's
saying. Like, who?
You want to talk about aging us? We just have.
I know Hollywood Hogan. I don't know who this Hulk Hogan guy is.
Was that the Thunderlips guy from Rocky 3?
Oh, yeah.
Man.
He went there, Trev. He went there. He went there, Vince. He went there. Okay.
Fair enough.
No, one of the greatest entertainers of my life. There's no doubt.
Yes. All right, so this is going to be a fun section of the show to do, and we are going to take a kind of a more of a macro look at this article that ESPN put out. And again, that was Bill Connolly put out an article talking about the college football national championship contenders and the what ifs that go along with all of those programs. And we just recently talked about Notre Dame, and now we're going to talk about kind of the rest of the schools that he referred to and take a look at it from a college football standpoint and kind of roll through them. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
The teams he mentioned were, which I thought was interesting. He looked at teams that had something like it was like a plus 5,000
or better
odds, because he said in the last 24 years, no team has won a title with better than plus 5,000 odds. I don't know what plus 5,000 means. You're a better. You could explain that.
You make a lot of money if you bet on them. That's what it means.
But like, that's where it came. So that's where he chose the teams. It wasn't like Bill Connolly saying like, these are the teams that I think have the best shot. It was here it is. Now it was broken down into there's a group of two ifs, and that's Penn State and Alabama. And then there was the three ifs. And that was Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M. And then everybody else had four. So Notre Dame was in that second category of teams. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to point out as to what the criteria was for who we included in this breakdown.
Yeah, for sure. So do we want to go in order of the article, Brian?
Well, I want to, first of all, a couple common themes that I wanted to kind of discuss.
Yep.
That was, I thought, interesting, which I think leads to what makes this season an interesting one, and one that can be a little bit harder to predict. Is two things that can create inconsistency. One is quarterback play. Yeah. And when you look through this list, Notre Dame was not the only team that had quarterback being an if. Penn State even had one. He said, like, if Drew Aller has another gear. You look at Alabama, if Ty Simpson can do what Ryan Grubb needs. That's the new OC. Ty Simpson's expected to be the quarterback. When you look at Ohio State, if the new quarterback does too, referring to clearing the bar, which is similar to what he said about Chris Ash. You look at Texas, if Arch is what he thinks he is. Georgia, if Gunnar Stockton is as good as Kirby Smart says he is. Then you get to Notre Dame, is CJ Carr ready? And even to the next group, and with A&M, he kind of did what Vince was talking about for Notre Dame, is he didn't talk about the quarterback or the receivers. He said, if the pass game finds a bit more pop. I mean, so you look at the first, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First 7 teams he talks about in this one, quarterback in some way, shape, form, or fashion is an if. And it's not for Clemson, who's next, but it is for Oregon. It's not for LSU, but it is for Michigan. If theirs was the funniest. The if for them, if there's a quarterback this season. I thought that
the if hilarious. For Michigan's quarterback is crazy.
Right.
Wow.
And then with Florida, it's if DJ Lagway is what we think he is. If Miami, if Carson Beck is a Cam Ward approximation. And Ole Miss, if Austin Simmons is the guy. So literally one team in that group, one team, Clemson, did not have their quarterback in some or their pass game in general really as a question mark. There's a little bit about Clemson, but it was more the pass game in general. It wasn't so much about Cade Klubnik. I just think that's going to be a big theme for this year. What teams can develop their new or young starting quarterbacks the best? And I think that adds to the intrigue. Say, well, yeah, but Notre Dame's got a new quarterback. Yes, so does Texas, so does Ohio State, so does Oregon, right? I mean, that's what I think is going to add a lot of intrigue to the season, guys, is that quarterback. I'm sorry, there were 2 teams that didn't have quarterback mentioned. LSU also did not. They talked about the receivers, but those are the only 2 teams mentioned. Clemson and LSU, the only 2 teams mentioned, who, by the way, square off in week 1. Are the only 2 teams mentioned of this breakdown that didn't have quarterback in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Either a returner that's got to play better, somebody's got to stay healthy, or a new guy that's got to step in and be that guy.
Well, and he said in the kind of the intro of the article is that there's 14 teams that he kind of had that he talked about. 9 are going to have a new starting quarterback, and 9 could end up starting quarterbacks who are sophomores or younger. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell you why there's all those question marks surrounding quarterback,
and it's the number one if with almost every team that we talk about.
It's exactly right. Yeah, and it should be. Quarterback's the most important position on the field. I mean, and if your quarterback's lousy and doesn't do what you are expecting him to do, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, that's the deep analysis we come here for at Irish Breakdown.
I'm just saying.
But you're absolutely spot on.
I'm just saying.
Your quarterback sucks. You're going to have a hard time winning. That's some deep stuff, man.
Yeah,
deep thoughts with Vince Handy.
Just ask Michigan. Just ask Michigan how that works.
I'm giving you a hard time. In all seriousness, Vince, look, you're spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, look, was Will Howard, Trevor Lawrence, or Joe Burrow? No. But in the playoffs last year, he played like it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joe Burrow. Will Howard was a dude in the playoffs last year.
Made throws when he needed to, man. I'll tell you what.
And what was the one game he didn't really get going? It's the Texas game where they only really scored 21 offensive points. I mean, even with that team with a fifth-year quarterback, when he didn't play great, and he wasn't bad against Texas. He went 24 of 33 for 289 yards. 70-something of those yards came on a screen pass in the second quarter. But, they didn't light Texas up the way they did some other teams, especially early in the game.
Yeah.
And that's the game they struggled to throw the ball back. I mean, he lit up Tennessee. Look at these yards per attempt numbers in the playoffs. A 10.7 against Tennessee with an 82.8% completion rate. 12.3 against Oregon with a 65.4% completion rate. 8.8, that's your worst number by far of the playoffs is 8.8, which for comparison's sake, 8.8 yards per pass attempt last season for a team would have tied for 9th nationally. And that was by far his worst playoff game. And then you look at the championship game against Notre Dame, he's 11.0, 81% of his passes, only threw 21 passes, went 17 of 21 for 231 yards. Even though he wasn't Joe Burrow and he wasn't Tua or Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence, in the playoffs, he played like it.
Sure did.
We're having fun joking with Vince because Vince has a great sense of humor and he takes jokes a lot better than I do. But the point is absolutely factual, Vince. If you want to win a championship, which is the whole point of this article, is teams are going to win championships, you have to have some certainty at quarterback. So whether that's a guy that's good like Drew Aller that's got to take his game to another level, a guy that's injured like DJ Lagway that's got to stay healthy, or you got a new starter, that's a theme throughout. And Trevor, the other one that I know that you noticed was a lot of portal talk.
Yeah.
Especially at receiver in this one.
A lot of portal talk, specifically at the skilled positions, I guess you could say. Some of it's along the offensive line, but common theme, a lot of talk about the transfer portal. You scroll down and you look at some of these lists. Texas, they talk about a rebuild offensive line. Georgia, they talk about a veteran receiving core. They brought in a lot of transfer portal guys, headlined by Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch. Notre Dame's receiving core, they mentioned Malachi Fields and Will Pauling. Texas A&M, they mention Casey Concepcion, which they got over from NC State. They mentioned Mario Craver, who they got from Mississippi State. The list goes on and on and on. There's very few teams that don't mention – there's very few teams that don't involve transfer portal in some way. Oregon, it's not on offense, but it's on defense. They talk about the transfer-heavy secondary. What if the transfer-heavy secondary isn't a liability? They mention it about LSU. They mention it about Michigan and their rebuilt skill core offers, in the ensuing season. And so transfer portal is a big theme. I think it's very indicative of where college football is at now. I think it speaks to the willingness of a lot of top teams are willing to go to the portal to help supplement their roster, some a little bit more heavy than others. But nonetheless, it's still a common theme that a lot of teams that are fighting and vying for a national championship appearance need to utilize the portal in some way or fashion.
I think another interesting thing was one thing that was not talked about with Notre Dame that was talked about a lot in this is line play, either side of the ball. There's a lot of either O-line or D-line, and there were several teams where it's almost like copied and pasted the same thing. He did, actually, which is fine. I think he did it for intentionally. It's like, there are certain things that he says, but like Alabama, if the pass rush picks up, I mean, that was something that he talked about with Ohio State. If the rebuilt lines hold up with Texas, if the rebuilt lines hold up with Georgia, if both rebuilt lines hold up, you saw that a lot. The Texas A&M, if a pass rush is better than the new pass rush is better than the old one. There was a lot of that throughout, guys, where quarterback play and line play was a common theme with a lot of these teams. And that's the one thing when you look at Notre Dame that they did not raise as a question mark. There's a lot of assumptions. I actually think, honestly, we're more critical of the Notre Dame offensive line. Not more critical like we're negative towards it, but we have more questions, about the Notre Dame offensive line than I think a lot of national people do. Greg McElroy ranked it as the best offensive line in college football coming back next year. He's not alone. And so that's one interesting one where actually it's the Notre Dame guys that are like, well, I think it should be really good. I ranked it number 2, Trevor ranked number 4, but there are still some, but we need to see it. But our need to see it is like, okay, are they 2nd, 1st, 5th, or 7th? It's going to be a top 10 O-line. So it's not your typical question. So I think that was interesting too, Trevor. There's a lot of line talk in this breakdown as well.
Yeah, to your point about not bringing it up with Notre Dame, I think I was a little bit more surprised about Notre Dame's D-line not being put in there. They lose Riley Mills. They lost. I know he wasn't that productive, but R.J. Oben was a longtime starter, a lot of experience. They lose Howard Cross, who was also a preseason All-American. Not a lot of talk about them. And you would think that would kind of be it would receive a lot more attention than what it should have. Their 2 interior potential starting defensive linemen have not played complete seasons yet for Notre Dame. A lot of their edge rushers, one of the biggest ones they're banking on is somebody coming off of a true freshman season. Now, mind you, he's 6'7", 270 pounds and has Hall of Fame DNA in his blood. So I think
that plays a little bit of a role.
That's also a factor. But some of their other guys, it's what step can Josh Burnham make? Can Boubacar return back to full health? When will he be? When is the coaching staff willing to put a full plate of work in front of him? Mm-hmm. I don't know if it could be against Miami or it could be against Boise or Arkansas I was kind of surprised to not see the D-line on that list. A lot of depth of talent, but there's questions at every level of depth, as there are with a lot of other defensive lines in college football. But yeah, that was definitely a common theme for sure.
Yeah, Trev, you mentioned a lot of receiver talk as well. I do think that pointing out these themes is interesting because a lot of the top teams in college football are legit. And I don't think a lot of them were like, dude, I don't know why that's on there. It's not like he was being lazy and just talking about quarterback and line plan transfers for every team. That's just the reality of this season, that there are a lot of those. When we did our top 10 O-line breakdown, we didn't have a lot of the title contenders on there. There's some. Had Notre Dame on there, Penn State on there, Clemson, Alabama, but there was like Iowa was on there, Arizona State's not a title contender in my opinion. There were teams like that were on there. It wasn't just the top 10 teams or the top 10 O-lines. There are teams that have O-line questions or D-line questions. And a lot of teams with quarterback questions. A lot of teams are depending on transfers. And that's why I say, like with Notre Dame, that's one of the reasons I am encouraged, because Notre Dame is relying on transfers, but not to the volume that some of these other teams are. And I think on defense, they're really relying – you really only need one transfer to play. Like, you're going to be okay if Jarrard Dawson doesn't step up, but you're going to be way better if he does. It's like, okay, so they have to beat Penn State and Georgia with basically the same D-line they had last year, minus an injured, ineffective Howard Cross you're replacing with Armel Mukam or something like that. Jason Onye actually is who you'd be replacing him with. All right, you'll be fine. But can you be elite? That's the question, and that's where you need guys like Jarrard Dawson to step up. But it's a common theme though. It's just unique. There's a lot of teams, and let's dive into it. Start going through it now, Vince, in that order we had. But there's a lot of teams, guys, that people are excited about, but have a lot of questions. Notre Dame's not the only one. I would actually argue that Notre Dame has fewer than some of the other top teams. Let's kick off with Texas. I would argue first and foremost that Notre Dame has fewer question marks than Texas. But diving into Texas, this is one of the more interesting teams to me, fellas, because This is a roster with loads of talent, but also loads of questions. And I would argue that everywhere except maybe running back, they have major questions going into the season. Now, major can mean doesn't mean like they're going to stink there. Major is in significant. How well Arch does is a significant question, not that I lack confidence in Arch playing well. You know what I mean? Like when I say major questions, but they've got questions. There's no proven dudes at receiver coming back or coming in the portal. There's major question marks about their offensive line. Their entire defensive tackle depth chart has been remade through the portal. Linebackers should be pretty good, but who's going to play opposite Anthony Hill? There's some question marks in the secondary. There's question marks everywhere for Texas, yet people continue to put them as a top 3 to 4 team in college football, and the expectations for Steve Sarkisian are very high. And so I think that's where I thought his question marks, his questions about Texas were interesting, but as expected and as it should have been, the number one question that they have is Arch as good as we think he is? And I think the answer to that is, well, it depends on how good you think he is. If you think he's the Heisman Trophy candidate, he may not be as good as expected, but I don't think that's what Arch needs to do for Texas to be good.
Agreed.
I don't think he needs to be this future number 1 overall draft pick that the Browns are tanking the season to get next year. You seen that stuff? It's like, this is like,
yes, I have.
ESPN's turned into a soap opera.
Don't forget, Nick Saban's going to be the coach.
It's so ridiculous, the soap opera that ESPN has turned into. But crazy. It is fair to say, like how good is Arch going to be? A good Arch, Texas is a pretty good playoff team. A really good Arch is what is needed for them to be a title contender. I think he's capable of being that, but it is a question. We now need to see it.
The thing I appreciated about the Texas portion of this article is Bill Connolly was able to take the inverse of what is already being assumed about Texas this year. You know, it would have been very easy for him to just be like, what if Arch isn't as good as what's panned out to be? Nah, not a chance. He's playing under Sark and he's Arch Manning. And that's I'm being a little hyperbolic, but that's kind of how
really.
A lot of other outlets
Not
have been
really.
treating. I've read articles from ESPN before that was, here's their biggest stumbling block. And then they always are sure to put in there at the bottom, not even in fine print, but we doubt that this is going to happen because it's Arch Manning and it's Texas and it's Steve Sarkisian. So I really appreciate the fact that they were willing to take a look at Arch Manning, and he did bring up, yes, he has starting experience, but you know, he threw for just 969 yards. He's only started 2 career games, and they were against Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State, teams that combined for a 7-17 record. So I think providing that context helps people a little bit because they already hear, okay, let's see. Arch Manning has already started 2 games. One of them was against the SEC opponent, and he went 2-0 in those games, and he's came in another meaningful moment. So I appreciate the fact that he was able to provide a little bit more context than just what a lot of people view big picture.
Well, he said this, Vince. He goes, if Manning is indeed the best player in the country in 2025, it's like, okay, right away, you're not starting well for me. Like, really the best player in the country?
Look, if he's the best player in the country,
right?
These other ifs kind of go by the wayside,
and
don't
that's
they?
what he says. He goes, if Manning is indeed the best player in the country in 2025, then the puzzle pieces all start to fit together for Steve Sarkisian's Longhorns. But what if he's merely a very good but inconsistent first-year starter? Hey, newsflash, that's exactly what Arch is going to be this season.
Correct.
A very good but inconsistent starter. That's exactly what I think C.J. Carr is going to be for Notre Dame. C.J. Carr's not going to look like 2019 Joe Burrow this year. Like, Joe Burrow didn't look like Joe Burrow his first year as a starter. You know what I mean? Like, Arch is not going to be what you all are making him out to be, but he doesn't have to be. He just has to be a playmaker. There's going to be there's going to be at least one game this year, I'm predicting now, where Arch is going to complete about 50% of his passes. He's going to have a bad pick or two early, but in the second half of that game, he's going to go out there and make some ridiculous throws, make a couple huge third down runs, lead Texas down on a drive, and it's going to lead him to a victory in a game where you look and say, boy, if he doesn't do that late, you may not win that football game. This isn't going to be Arch going out there and looking like Peyton, and that's what I think. He's Eli, not Peyton as a player. His playing style is way similar to Eli's, in my opinion, than Peyton's, but with even more athleticism than what Eli brought to the table, which means he's going to make mistakes. He's going to throw the ball to the other team at times. He's going to make the wrong read because he's a first-year starter. but he's also going to be really good in other moments. And that's the thing, is they've got to understand he's going to have some games where he doesn't look like the future number 1 overall pick. But what I like about Arch is that I don't think he needs to be that. I view Arch very differently than a lot of national people. I view him as more of a street ball player right now. He's going to do some things in the pocket, but he's going to do a lot of good stuff when the play breaks down. You've got to build around that. And I think that's the element he brings to the table. That's what Quinn Ewers did not do last year. When Quinn Ewers could just sit back and go through his reads and get the ball out, that Texas offense was hard to stop. But when his offensive line started getting their butts whooped a little bit, Vince, that's when they got into some trouble. And so I just think that that's who he's going to be. He's going to be an inconsistent starter who at times, who overall is very good. But I don't think Texas needs more than that to be a playoff contender. But what is going to have to happen, however, is if you and I are right about him, some of these other questions are going to have to get answered. Number 2 was if the young receivers give Arch what he needs. I think that, and he says if the rebuilt lines hold up. I think the receiver thing is a question mark. I'm not as concerned about that. You know me, Vince, and you and I agree on this. I don't care about experience at receiver. I care about talent. And talent eventually wins the day at receiver. It's the lines that are my big concern, because when I watched Texas get beat last year 3 times, every single time they got whooped in the trenches, and they're completely rebuilding their offensive line, and they're completely rebuilding their D tackles. That's the biggest question for Texas, is the lines. I think Arch is going to be fine. Is he going to be the best player in the country? No. Is he going to be a darn good player? I do. I expect he will be.
But it can't just be him. Right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. It can't just be him. He's going to need a run game.
Right.
He's going to need time. He's going to need to do all of those things.
And
now,
that's why the O-line to me is by far the biggest if for me with Texas. If the offensive line's good, Arch is going to be just fine.
Yeah, Arch has shown us enough to where he's going to be fine. Again, I'm with you. I am not going to predict that he's going to be the best player in college football. I am not ready to go there yet by any stretch. But he's going to be just fine. He has enough talent to get this team where they want to go, to get him to the playoff and all of those guys. He absolutely has enough talent to do that. But if he's running for his life and he doesn't have an offsetting running game to help him out, then they're not going to
do a rhythm.
Exactly. Yeah. Then they're not going to be able to.
Because Arch is a junior. He's not a redshirt freshman. He's a junior.
Yeah.
And so he's played some football.
But he's got 1,000 yards. I mean, he's got 900 and some odd yards. Like he's been in games.
Who you are, you need your offensive line to play more consistently. Right. And you need your offensive line to definitely play better than it did last year. And you're going to do that with a new look offensive line. That to me, I don't even think there's a close second for Texas.
Big if, yeah.
I'd put the lines one that he said, Trev, at the very top for Texas. Arch is not a question mark for me, other than just how good is he going to be? Is he good? Is he very good? Is he elite? But he's going to at least be good, in my opinion. Because like you said, we have seen it. Like Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, those are teams where there's much greater variance for their quarterbacks, because we've never really seen them play meaningful down of football.
Correct.
Yeah. We've seen Arch play meaningful downs of football, both as a starter and coming off the bench. So I just – it is a question mark, but I would put the Arch one down at number 3.
No, I'm with you, because you need other things to happen for him to have the type of season that they need. I mean, you brought up Texas's offensive line. I completely agree with that. And at the end of the day, I'm also not naive to the fact that they could have like a jump from what Notre Dame had from 23 to 24. Because there's a lot of people, well, Texas lost Kelvin Banks and they had another tackle that was drafted and they're going to somehow be better. That's a valid question. But then you look at Notre Dame's offensive line, who started a true freshman at left tackle, and they had 6 combined career starts going into the Texas A&M game. So it could also be that. But again, that's the bigger question.
Right.
And that's where I fall when I talk about Texas. Now, I know that we're all 3 on the same page when it comes to that. It's not that we're predicting them to be bad. It's just a bigger what if.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just not as sold that they're the number 1 team in the country. I'm just not sold that they have the best roster in college football. I'm just not sold on that. No. But these questions are going to tell us. And then, they were an elite team the last 2 years, a team that people are expecting to kind of rise back to elite status, me included. It's Alabama. That was the other 2-if team. That was the biggest surprise for me. I look at that Alabama team, and that's the only 2 ifs you have is Ty Simpson, and they spent like 87,000 words talking about Ty Simpson. And then if the pass rush can get better, I feel like with Alabama, I'm high on Alabama this year, but I feel like there's a lot of things being assumed about this team, especially on defense. And there's this assumption that Alabama is going to be great on defense this year. And I do think they're going to be improved. But I don't know if I'm ready to go into they're going to be great on defense this year. I think that they could be, but I still think there's a few more questions in that second on that defense on the back end than just if the pass rush is better. Because I don't know that the pass rush is necessarily something that Alabama is building. We've got to get 50 sacks. I don't know that that's what they're trying to do. I just think that their offensive line is still, to me, a work in progress. Can they run the ball? Can they protect the quarterback? You know, like there's more than just if Ty Simpson can do what Ryan Grubb wants.
Yeah.
Because, look, I think Alabama's a good team, but I don't know that you can run through the SEC the way you ran through the Pac-12 without not being able to run the football more effectively. Is that – I mean, you guys could – like, I'd like to hear if you guys disagree with that, but I don't think if you rush for 118 yards a game like they did in 2023 that you're playing for a title when you're playing in the SEC. That worked for the Pac-12, but I don't think that works in the SEC. I just don't. That's still a question for me.
Especially with having a new starter at quarterback. You're having to replace a guy who was your leading rusher last season. And so you're not going to have that to lean on. You know, so what comes behind it? Well,
I also think they lost their best running back this offseason too, in Justice Haynes.
Mm-hmm. You no longer have that dynamic 1-2 punch with Justice Haynes and Jam Miller. You now just have Jam Miller, who averaged 4.6 yards a carry last year. Jalen Milroe led your team with 726 rushing yards and 20 rushing touchdowns. What is that going to look like now that you're going to have a duo of Jam Miller and Richard Young? And Richard Young's a quality back. He averaged 5.4 yards a carry last season, but he's not Justice Haynes, at least not yet.
I don't think he is, right. Agree.
And so that's the bigger question mark to me. Why am I more comfortable with C.J. Carr stepping into the starting lineup or Kenny Minchey stepping into the starting lineup at Notre Dame than I am Ty Simpson or whoever's going to step in at Alabama? It's because Notre Dame has a stellar run game that either one of those young quarterbacks can fall on. And yes, I understand that Alabama has Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, and they got an Isaiah Horton in the portal, but you got to be able to run the ball. I'm with you 100%, especially in a league like the SEC.
Like, I mean, Trev, last year they ranked 62nd in the country in sacks allowed and 47th in rushing, to your point. But that was, as you rightly pointed out, that was with a quarterback who ran for 732 of those yards, and he ran for 20 of your 21 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
You were not getting that from Ty Simpson. Your number one running back coming into the season averaged 4.6 yards per carry last year. Sorry, that has to get better. That to me is much more of a question mark than how will, like, some of the things like Notre Dame's receiving core. I've seen Notre Dame's receiving core perform at an elite level more than I saw Alabama's run game perform at an elite level. I can just go point to the last two games of the playoffs last year. So I think that is a much bigger, because it's going to have to be, to your point, it's going to have to be running back driven this year, not quarterback driven like it was last year. And I think that's more of how this offensive staff would prefer it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they didn't have a running quarterback at Washington. Michael Penix could run, but he wasn't a runner.
Right.
He could scramble. So it's going to be an interesting adjustment for them.
Well, I mean, to your point about being able to do it in the SEC, Tennessee is a prime example. Tennessee was not a threat throwing the football down the field in meaningful games. Yeah, there was a stat at one point in time where it's like Nico's 19 touchdown passes, and like one of them came against a Power 4 opponent of any relevancy. But what did they have? They had Dylan Sampson last year that rushed for almost 1,500 yards and 22 rushing touchdowns, and they made the playoffs. Alabama didn't. You got to find a way to run the football. I know more goes into it. I'm taking a significant macro view here. But if you go and dive into it, I think running game is a huge question. Or we could do what we did with some of the other ones and kind of bundle it all together. The offensive line play, run game.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say run game is more of it for me.
Yeah.
I think their pass pro was okay last year. I think Jalen Milroe ran them into some mistakes. I think he held on to the ball a little bit too long. But you're also replacing Tyler Booker, who I believe was a first-round draft pick at guard. So you're replacing your best offensive lineman from last year as well. But I think they'll figure these things out. I like Alabama this year. I just would have had them with an additional if.
Sorry, I had to look to see who was next. Ohio State is next on the list. I know Archer's going to be excited about that. And Ohio State had 3 ifs along the line, in this article. And so let's kind of chat about some Ohio State. So new coordinators, and the coordinator situation is an interesting one for Ohio State too, Brian, because they won national championship, and it didn't seem like all was like happy times from a coordinator position, even though they won a national title. But I think that's a legitimate if.
Yeah, I was very interested to see, and actually pleased and agreed with the fact that quarterback wasn't number one. Because I'll be honest, I'm not overly concerned about quarterback for Ohio State this year. It's not really an if for me. It is, and you have to mention it for the same reason you have to mention Arch Manning and CJ Carr, because they haven't shown it.
Because they're new, yeah, right.
But there's a track record with Ryan Day that if you play offense in this system, you're going to produce. And we've talked about this. Even the worst quarterback they've had of the Ryan Day era is a kid that they went, 11-2 with, right? Or did they go 11-3 2 years ago? 11-2. You lost your last 2 games of the year to Michigan and Missouri. And even with that, he still passed for over 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, averaged 9.1 yards per attempt, and then goes to Syracuse and leads the nation in rushing, in passing. Kyle McCord also that year had minus 65 yards rushing. The big difference between Julian Sain and Kyle McCord is Julian Sain's a very athletic guy. I wouldn't call him a runner. He's more of he reminds me a lot of Ian Book athletically, in that he's not a guy you're going to run designed runs to because he's not very big, but you better hope you respect passing lanes, because if you overshoot your passing lanes, he's going to take off and hurt you. He's going to buy time in the pocket. But also just the nature of the offense is just kind of like, well, some coaches deserve a benefit of the doubt. We just assume that when Mike Mickens has a new DB, that guy's going to be good. When Ryan Day has a new quarterback, I just kind of assume that guy's going to be good. And I thought Kyle McCord, even 2 years ago, was a scapegoat for a lot of other issues that team had. And he just kind of got blamed for it all. He was fine. And I think this team, if you can win a title with Will Howard, you can't tell me Kyle McCord was your biggest problem the year before. You just can't. You're not going to convince me of that. But now you've got, I think the coordinator thing was interesting, because as good as that team was, as talented as they were, they still lost 2 regular season games last year. There was something missing from that team, and almost honestly should have lost in Nebraska. But when it mattered, they turned it on, and the best team in the country started playing like the best team in the country. Now you lose your D coordinator. You replace him with an NFL guy that I don't think has ever coached in college. Has Matt Patricia ever coached in college?
He was a graduate assistant in 2004.
At Ohio State?
No.
Or just somewhere?
Just somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking that up right now. It was 01 to 03. He was at Syracuse as a GA. And then he's been in the NFL ever since. With the Patriots and from 04 to when he became the head coach for the Lions in 18. And then in 21, 22 was with the Eagles again, and then in 23 he was with the Patriots again, and then he was with the Eagles in 23. And then in 24, I don't think he was coaching last year. So that's a similar question mark to what we had about Al Golden. It's a similar question mark to about Chris Ash. But the difference between those two guys is that there's at least some college background that we could point to and say, yeah, it's been 20 years since Al Golden ran a defense, but when he was running defenses in college, they were pretty good, and I think that's a big question mark. I'm not as concerned about Brian Hartline on the other side, because if he doesn't do a good job, Ryan Day is going to take over and run the offense. I'm not as concerned about that. But I think the Matt Patricia one is, in my opinion, is a big, big question mark, a big if. How is he going to handle coaching younger players? Is he even that good of a defensive coach? I always ask that question about Bill Belichick disciples. They don't have a good track record as coordinators or coaches and other. I think Bill O'Brien's about the only guy that I can think of that's gone somewhere and had success. And Charlie Weiss had short-term success, and then it fell through. There haven't been a lot of guys that have left New England and succeeded because Belichick was the architect. So that is That's the biggest one for me. Honestly, after that, I don't really have a lot of questions about Ohio State's roster.
Yeah.
I think the rebuilt lines one was a fair one. How are they going to be? That's a very fair question. There's just a level of, but I know they're going to be talented, and they'll figure it out.
No.
How are they going to be at defensive end without JT and Jack? Kenyatta Jackson's going to be an all Big Ten guy. Eldrick Houston's going to be a dude. Like, they're going to be fine. I'm really not worried about the talent for Ohio State. It's, can the coaching get them in position? Because I just watched a coaching staff that wasn't cohesive last year almost get themselves knocked out of the playoffs by almost losing to Nebraska at home and then losing to Michigan at home. So that's going to have to get addressed in a big way, in my opinion. And it's a new staff. It's a new O-line coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. There's been some important changes for Ohio State. If they can figure that out, Ohio State will be really good again.
Next team on the list.
Trev, did you have any Ohio State thoughts?
No, yeah. The only one that I had, it also falls in line with the coordinators, but it's a little bit more about the dynamic between Ryan Day and his coordinators. One of the reasons why Ohio State went on the run that they did is because Ryan Day was willing to put more onto Chip Kelly's plate. And he was willing to kind of take a step back from being so hands-on with the offense. Is he going to be willing to do that with a guy like Brian Hartline, who's now a first-time offensive coordinator at Ohio State? What is that going to look like for him? Or is he going to be very quick on the trigger to then reinsert himself back into?
Yeah, well, Brian Hartline was the offensive coordinator before Chip Kelly got brought in. But the problem was exactly what you said, though, Trevor. He did not allow him to do that. He said he was going to do it, but then he did not allow him to do it. Now, allegedly, he's going to allow him to do it.
Yep. The other question that I have is with him from having the wide receiver background that he has, obviously, and it's a very successful track record. You bring back arguably the best wide receiving core in the country. We believe that it is.
And it ain't a strong argument.
No.
It's arguable, but it ain't that much of an argument.
But what made Ohio State so good last year in the postseason is they were finally able to establish a run game. Is Brian Hartline, is Ryan Day going to be willing to do that this upcoming season? Because they've had great wide receiver play and great quarterback play in the previous years under Ryan Day where they did not win a national championship. Or is that going to change now? The only other question that I have with them is their backfield. I like James Peoples. I like him significantly more than C.J. Donaldson. I think the eye-popping thing for C.J. Donaldson is just his size. He's like 6'2", 242 or something crazy. But that's not the same dynamic you had last year with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. And so how is that offensive dynamic going to work? Because I'm with you. I do have more questions about defense, but is Ohio State just going to resort back to, hey, you don't want to mess with us because we can throw it 50 times a game for almost 500 yards and we're going to have 6 touchdowns.
Yep.
It's like, that's great, but can you run the football consistently?
Can you stop the run?
Exactly.
Exactly.
So that's another question that I had about them.
Because they shut Notre Dame's run game down.
Sure did.
They did. They did. After the first drive. First drive they couldn't, but after that, Notre Dame couldn't get the run game going.
I was very confident after that first drive.
Oh, yeah.
Say la vie. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up. All right. Next team we are going to talk about is a team that Notre Dame did have some success against, and that is the Georgia Bulldogs. And the Georgia Bulldogs had, I believe, 3 ifs under their name. And, of course, not surprisingly, it starts with the quarterback. And it was funny because it said Gunnar Stockton is as good as Kirby Smart says.
That was great. Yeah.
That just made me laugh a little bit.
They also said if the veteran receiving core improves and if the rebuilt lines hold up. I'll be honest with you. Am I nuts? You guys tell me. Am I nuts for not being worried about Gunnar Stockton?
No, I was about to say, I was like, this kind of isn't that high up on the what ifs list for me.
It's not. It really isn't. Like, is he going to throw for 4,000 yards? No, but this is the kind of quarterback that I think Kirby needs. Like, he's just kind of that gamer. The kid played 1.5 games basically last year. And in one of those halves, he led them to a comeback win over Texas. And in the other game, he battled his butt off against one of the best defenses in college football. And yeah, he made some mistakes in that game. You know who else made mistakes against Notre Dame's defense the last few years? Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Drake May. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of NFL guys have had struggles against this Notre Dame pass defense, this Notre Dame defense. But he showed me he was a gamer, and he was not overwhelmed by the moment. mean, kid started like 7 of 7 in that game. That's some great throws. The deep ball that Dylan Bell dropped, the back shoulder against Leonard Moore on an early drive where the guy caught it and then took a step out of bounds. The deep ball to I'm drawing a complete blank on there. Arian Smith, the deep ball he threw to him to beat Christian Gray. When he had time to throw, I liked what I saw from him. There was other times like the fade ball he threw in the end zone on 4th down. That was not a bad ball. This was great coverage. And I just thought that Notre Dame just outplayed Georgia, but I don't have a lot of worries about Gunnar Stockton. I really don't. I'm much more worried about their lines. And I'm much more worried about, are these receivers going to be as good as people think they're going to be? And the biggest question I have for Georgia that should be number one by a mile, can they run the freaking ball? They were a terrible rushing team last year with good talent at running back. They got to figure out a way to run the ball. Kirby's got to go back to playing his style of play. You could get away with it when you had Todd Monken, but you don't have Todd Monken. You got to stop letting Mike Bobo try to prove that he's Todd Monken and make Mike Bobo prove that he can run the football. That's how Georgia's got to get back to playing that brand of football if they're going to win outside of the Todd Monken era. That's my number one by a mile.
Yep, agreed. And then I think my number 2 would be around their defensive front 7, really their defense as a whole. Now, I know we're going to talk about top 10 defensive lines later on in the offseason. And spoiler alert, Georgia's on my list, kind of for what we talked about for Ohio State's quarterback situation, just proven track record. But I think that's a higher what if for me as their front 7 than what Gunnar Stockton is. I file him under the Jake Fromms of the world and the Stetson Bennett's of the world. I don't put him with Justin Fields and Carson Beck and Jacob Eason because he just fits that mold. And to your point, Brian, I couldn't agree with you more, man. It forces Kirby to, I don't want to say be a good coach because he's a good coach.
Yes.
But it forces him to not just rely on, we have our 5-star blue chip guy back there. He can just run the offense. It forces them to be creative on offense, which I do in turn think will make them be more efficient running the football. But again, it's still a what if.
You asked him to go out there and throw all over Notre Dame, and you didn't give him a run game to protect him.
Right.
And it worked for a quarter, but that was it. You've got to be able to run the football. That's number one. And then the other one is their D-line. I was glad they said this. It's a brand new looking D-line. Now, Georgia to a degree has earned sort of a benefit of the doubt, but I just don't look at the talent level and see the same type of Georgia D-line. It's still going to be good, but is it going to be elite? That's another question for me. But I'd have Gunnar Stockton on there, but he'd be like 3 for me. And he's only on there from the standpoint of, okay, now let's see how he does as the guy as opposed to the guy that came off the bench where there's not as much pressure on him.
Right.
How is he now that he's the guy for an entire year? But I also like Georgia's depth at quarterback. I like their backup quarterback kid from, I think, Connecticut. Very talented player, mobile guy, but he's a lot like Gunnar in that he's not this big-time, high 5-star drop-back throw. He's a pretty good athlete, too. He can run around a little bit, too. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see how that one goes. But, yeah, that's really my big thing with Georgia is, shockingly, my biggest question marks about Georgia are their lines. 2 years ago, I would have not have dreamed that I would have said that.
Mm-hmm.
But both lines are the big. If the O-line plays well, Gunner's going to be just fine, in my opinion. And if the D-line is as good as Georgia thinks it is, then Georgia will once again be a title contender. But those are big ifs for me right now.
Next team on the list is another SEC team out of Texas, and that is the Texas A&M Aggies. And they had 3 ifs next to their name. The first being if the passing game finds a bit more pop. They had if a new pass rush is better than the old one, and if the big play breakdowns are smaller. So let's say, Trev, on Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think the pass game is a very legitimate what if. I think it's established that this is a program that can run the football. You look at their offensive line, their stable of running backs they have coming back, and their very mobile quarterback who's coming back under center. I'm not worried about their run game in the slightest. It is their pass game. Now, what they have working for them, Colin Klein's going into year 2. I think the wide receiver and skilled talent that they have fits more of his play calling style than, the 6'5" Noah Thomas that they had last year. And the other kid's name is escaping me, but he was another 6'3", 6'4", big-bodied kid. Now you have a little bit more like run after the catch type of guys. You know, you have Casey Concepcion, you got Mario Craver over from Mississippi State. Now
it's more of the K-State type of receiver. K-State
yes.
dominate those little tiny, quick, shifty receivers. You
Tyler
get the quick
Lockett's
name
of the
too.
world.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
And now you went from a spot where Terry Bussey last year, who was rotating between wide receiver and corner, he's focusing more on wide receiver now. He was one of your smaller receivers last year on the roster, and now he is your tallest receiver in the rotation.
They're going to look so different. I mean, you had Noah Thomas, who's 6'6", 200. You had Ja'Day Walker, who was 6'4", 205. You were throwing to your tight ends. I mean, they're going to just be a bunch of really quick, shifty route runner types, which is, I think, what works for this offense. And then Mario Craver, he's like 5'10", but he can fly. He is fast.
Yeah.
I think he caught something like 17 passes last year, but he averaged like around 20 yards a catch. He was at 17 catches for 368 yards, 21.7 yards per catch. And he's a guy that can stretch the field. And one catch against Texas, only one catch against Texas. Went for 46 yards. Only had 2 catches against Georgia. They went for 75 yards. Only had 3 catches against Florida, but they went for 62 yards. Like, he can stretch the field. And they got hurt second half of the year. So I think that, but they got to show that they can play together. That Marcel Reed can get the ball where it's got to get to. He's got to make quicker decisions. I think that's a legitimate question. I think the big play breakdowns are smaller. That one I kind of expect to happen in year 2 under Mike Elko, but I worry about the fact that Jay Bateman still is defensive coordinator. But we've heard all offseason that Mike Elko is going to take a bigger role on the defense. That's an important thing. If he actually does that, then I think the defense will become more sound and disciplined. And then is the pass rush better than the old one? It's a very fair question, because they were expecting that pass rush to be legit last year, and it never really was. They were more talented than they were as individuals than they were as a unit. You had a bunch of dudes doing their own thing. I think this year they're going to have more blue-collar types. I don't think Cassius Howell brings the same ego to the table that some of the guys they brought last year brought to the table. I think that part will be good. Will it be good enough to contend for a title? That's a very fair question. I would have honestly put their secondary on here as a bigger question mark for me. But I think that also kind of plays into, they talk a lot about it in the breakdown part of it. So I think there's talent in the secondary, but it's got a lot to prove. Can they play to their talent? That's a big question.
Yeah, absolutely. One of Des Ricks or Julian Humphrey has to live up to that blue chip rating that they got coming out of high school. I'm with you there completely.
A team very familiar to Irish fans, at least for the next 12 years, is going to be the Clemson Tigers, and they are next on this list. And they have 4 ifs in front of their name.
Yeah.
I
just kind of thought he was stretching 1 into 2.
Okay.
Like, did you guys kind of get that vibe with 2 and 3? If the run defense doesn't stink anymore and if the pass rush has teeth again, you could have kind of put that into 1. If the D-line's as good as advertised, and kind of, I thought he kind of was stretching it a little bit to get the 4. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah, Clemson's, when I looked at it, was probably the one that I disagreed with the most out of all of the ones on this list. Because some of them I think there's better ones that you could have put in there. And then there's some that the last one, if the turnovers fairy isn't too cruel, that's the only one that didn't really have in-depth analysis. It was just kind of like chalking it up to luck, like being lucky or unlucky. I didn't love that being on there. And then the defensive line is one of the very few questions that I don't have about Clemson.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest with you, the fact that they bring back Peter Woods and TJ Parker, they combined for 71 pressures last year. That's crazy. 30 hits plus sacks on the quarterback, and then they went and picked up Will Helt from Purdue. I don't think the D-line is a question mark. I would have had their run game as one of the top question marks.
Yeah, I get the sense that, like, Bill Connelly only watched Stanford or Clemson play like 3 times last year, and it was against Louisville, South Carolina, and Texas. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, the run defense has to be more consistent, but they also held 5 teams under 90 yards. You know, like, they were very inconsistent. I think that's certainly a big part of it. But your number one question is your receivers and your pass game. Like, that was an odd number one, Trev. Like, if the 4 long passes meant something, he goes, it's been a while since Dabo Swinney's Clemson had a genuinely explosive attack. Quarterback Cade Klubnik averaged a paltry 10.9 yards per completion over 3 years, but against an excellent Texas secondary in the CFP, he completed 4 passes thrown 20 yards downfield, finishing with 336 yards and 3 touchdowns. Granted, most of it came while the Tigers were trailing. False. But this sudden pop was intriguing. Was it a one-time thing, or with Antonio Williams and star sophomores Bryant Westcott Jr. and TJ Moore, is this the new norm? How can you have 2 sophomores if the pass offense didn't do anything until that game? Like, that made no sense. You look at the last, 9-10 games a year, they threw for 343, 345, 228, 211, 288, 260, 280, 262, and 336. Like, they didn't just figure it out against Clemson. I thought that was a very misleading thing to say. That is not at all an if for the Clemson offense. The if is what you said, Trev. Can they run the ball? Because if you're not worried about their run game and you can stop it with your 6-man box and you can drop into coverage, and you're going to be able to do some things against their pass offense. But if you can't run the ball, if you can run the ball, that's where they're going to be good. I think the fact that you had 2 comments about their defensive line, essentially defense, run defense, pass rush, the fact that you said something about the receiving game, passing game, and then something about like gimmicky turnovers, nothing about the run game. Like, I think their rushing offense is a bigger question than the rushing defense. They both got to get better.
I would have had something in there, probably not at the top of the list, but somewhere in the list. Can Cade Klubnik be the guy that people think he is? I know he's put up yards, but like, I just feel like he needs to take that next step as a leader and as a guy that can put the team on his back, make plays when it counts. Like that, he just doesn't seem like he's that guy to me yet. I think he's an accumulator of stats. He does good things at times, but can he take that next level to make them a championship level
for a full season? I'd say that's a fair question. I still think the second half of last year that Cade started to be that guy.
Okay.
He for me, he did. And part of it is because he's not a guy that's going to take average talent around him and elevate him. That's not who he is. He's 6'2", barely 200 pounds.
Right.
He's not that guy. He is if you give me some weapons, I'm going to put in some work.
Okay.
And so, and I think that as the young freshman receiver started to step up, as Antonio Williams got healthy, all of a sudden Cade looks like a dude, because I think that's who he is. I don't think he's and your point is valid. Like, can he put a team on his shoulders? If you give him a good team, he's going to be that gamer that gets the ball where he needs to go to in that regard. He's not he's not going to go win a game the same way that like Deshaun Watson did in 2016. That's unfair to ask of him, but they don't need him to be that guy this year. But you better give him a run game, because if it's all going to be about just Cade dropping back all day, that may work in the ACC. That's not going to work when you get to the postseason.
No.
You've got to have balance. That's a far bigger question than guys that he says Antonio Williams and star sophomores. Like, you're worried about Antonio Williams and star sophomores? Like, you're not – the fact that they had to convert a receiver to running back as the number 1 or number 2 running back, they're relying on a true freshman. That's not a bigger concern for you?
Yeah.
That it just is for me. This is the one that I thought he was the most off on. The only one in there that I really agree with, like, wholeheartedly, is the run defense.
Well, if you're going to talk about one of the offensive or defensive lines, I would have chosen the offensive line over the D line, if I'm just being honest. You go and you look at what they bring back on the O-line. We've talked about it before, but Walker Parks and Blake Miller have the right side held down. I'm not too concerned about that. But Tristan Lay and Harris Sewell have to take a jump more than what members of the D-line have to make a jump. And then with Cade Klubnik, Vince, I'm with you. Yeah, I was up until the SMU Texas game. That was a lot of my feelings too. But you kind of look at it, and from Clemson's championship teams, the only quarterback they had that kind of had to put the team on their back and carry a program like that was Deshaun Watson. I would argue that Trevor Lawrence didn't have to put the team on his shoulders in 2018.
He did in 19 and 20, and they didn't win a title.
And so Clemson has shown that when they have good supporting cast around them, they're able to pull it off, and that's what I think he has. But Vince, I don't know if Cade Klubnik is the guy that can do what Riley Leonard did for Notre Dame last year, but I just don't know if he has to this year for Clemson because of what they got.
But even in 2016, I mean, we talk a lot about Deshaun putting that team on his shoulders, partly because their defense was spotty, but he was still throwing to Mike Williams and Jordan Leggett and Deion Kane.
Yeah.
He was still handing the ball off to Wayne Gallman. Like, even then, like, Cade did not even have that the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
He was thrown to Bo Collins and guys like, they were good, solid football players. But last year when he finally got dudes, imagine that. I always laugh. Well, this guy didn't really do anything till he got Terrell Davis. And I'm like, well, yeah, Elway probably would have won Super Bowls if he was throwing to Jerry Rice his whole career and handing off to Roger Craig. Yeah, you're right. If he had that, he probably would have won 4 Super Bowls. Like, have we ever seen a quarterback that like just took a bunch of nobodies? Oh, Tom Brady. Tom Brady had like 5 Hall of Famers on that defense.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
That's one of my
Super Bowls. Yeah.
Whenever I get into football debates with some of my buddies, that's a lot of their go-tos. It's like, well, I mean, take away from Jalen Hurts. You take away Saquon and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and that good O-line. Are they winning a Super Bowl? It's like, well, no, but what team is? Like,
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Well, if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley and exactly. Yeah, it's kind of silly.
Yeah,
but could he make winning plays? That was a very legitimate question about Cade until last year.
Yep.
And I actually think it started before that. I actually think it started against Pitt. I really do. I think that's when you kind of saw him say, hey, because I actually thought he made winning plays against South Carolina. His team let him down in that game, in my opinion. But I think we saw more of that. But now he's got to do it in game 1. And I think the LSU game is going to tell us a lot about his ability to do that. He doesn't have to carry him, but he's got to make winning plays.
Next team on this list is one of our favorites, and that would be the LSU Tigers. They have 4 ifs next to their name. I'll rattle them off, and then you guys can talk about them. Here we go. If new star receivers emerge, if the rebuilt lines hold up, if transfers upgrade the secondary, and if the risks are better rewarded.
I would have honestly only had LSU as a 3. I don't think the 4th one is really –
it's a weird one if the risks are rewarded.
I feel like with some of these 4s, he kind of had to throw in something kind of wonky
to
kind of get him there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest question mark with LSU, and it needs to stand out from the D-line, the biggest question mark with LSU at the very top of the list in all bold and all caps is can the rebuild offensive line hold up? If the offensive line holds up, they're going to be very good on offense. They got a really good young sophomore running back in Caden Durham. We know that when Garrett Nussmeier has time to throw, he's really effective. When he gets pressured, he's very ineffective and turns the ball over a lot. The talented receivers, like I think there's a little too much hype about the receivers, but they're still good. I mean, a receiving core with Aaron Anderson coming back, with Chris Hilton coming back, with Barrion Brown coming in and Nick Anderson coming in, as long as they're healthy, they've got some talent at tight end. As long as they're healthy, that's plenty enough for receiver talent to go out there and win a lot of games. But can the offensive line protect the quarterback and open up running lanes? Because I would like to see LSU be a little bit more balanced this year. So I think they got the running backs to do it, but do they have the line to do it? That's the question. I think that is far and away the biggest question for LSU. If they answer that, all their other what-ifs on offense are kind of, like, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. It's really the offensive line. Defensively, I do think there's those two I buy. Can the rebuilt D-line hold up, and can the transfer secondaries step up and perform? Like, I think the taking them just as individuals, I think there was too much hype put on the secondary players as individuals. Like, this guy's a top 10 transfer. I'm like, he's good, but he's not that good. But if you take that away, okay, I don't like where they were ranked. Okay, but here's the question, Brian. Let's just focus on LSU. Are they upgrades over what they had? Oh, by big time upgrades over what they had. I think Bryce Baker did a nice job last year of kind of turning that. Blake Baker did a nice job of turning that defense around last year. He'll have better players now, year to the system. I think that's a question mark, but I have more confidence they're going to be solid on defense. But can they play championship caliber defense? That would be my third question. And I think the secondary players, the transfers on the D line, I think those are the things that are going to determine if LSU can play that kind of football.
Yeah. Yep. We see that the same. I mean, I'm going to have the same questions about every transfer portal unit or every unit built through the portal. And that's not just specific to LSU. How are they going to come together and play together? But I'm with you. Offensive line needs to be at the top of that list.
If you wanted to have a fourth one, I think a good fourth one would be, can Brian Kelly win big games consistently?
Ooh.
No, I'm not trying to throw shade. I think that's a very fair observation.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. I like it. I like it.
Or at least the opener. Look, when you have that many transfer portal players on your roster,
can you get them ready?
You're losing high-octane week 1 games every year that you've been the head coach.
It puts you behind the 8 ball to a degree, and I agree with that, Trev. But here's the thing: all 3 of those losses were out of conference. It's can you stop not showing up for games like A&M? I mean, Brian Kelly's been at LSU 3 years now, and he's lost to A&M twice by almost identical score. Actually, by an identical score, 38-23. Lost to him twice. You got blown out by Alabama this year in a game you had no business at home, by the way, getting blown out 42-37 at home. You got beat by 11 at Florida. Like, those are the kind of things that you've got to show me you can stop doing it. You lose by 21 to LSU the year before. You get smacked by Alabama. You lose the Ole Miss game. Those are big games that you got to win with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and 2 elite receivers. And then in 2022, yeah, the Florida State game sucked. But, Trev, if they don't choke away the Tennessee game at home, like, that season has a very different standard. So that year, yeah, who'd you play that was good that year? Florida State, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. Those are the 4 good teams you played. Yeah, but we beat Alabama. Cool. But you lost the other 3.
Cool.
You lost the other 3. Like, it's consistently winning those big games that Brian Kelly still has to show that his team can do that. And, 2023, they had some good wins. They went on the road and beat a really good Missouri team. That's a big win. But you lost you played 4 teams that I think were good that year. You played Florida State, Ole Miss, Missouri, and Alabama. Great win on the road over a top 10 Missouri team that beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Great win. You went 1-3 in those 4 games. Like, that's been the pattern under Brian Kelly. Last year they played 1, 2, 3 ranked teams. They went 2-1 against those teams, but you only went 2-1 against those teams because, and A&M was ranked at the time, but because of Lenore Sellers getting hurt. If Lenore Sellers doesn't get hurt, LSU does not beat South Carolina. They were down big until he got hurt. And then Robbie Ashford was like, hey, here's the ball, LSU, have at it. So those are the things. He's got to get them to play better on a more consistent basis against the better teams in the schedule if they want to win a championship. Much more so than any of the coaches we've talked about that are established. Mike Elko has to establish that, but he's beat Brian Kelly last year. So those are the things you look at and say, if you want to get a 4th, that's a big question mark for me. And to your point, Trev, you're fine if you lose the opener. If you win the rest of them, you can't do. But that puts you behind 8 ball where you now can't afford a couple conference losses unless they're like really close losses to really, really good teams. But you've got to start winning some more of those games.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the other part of it is just the locker room effect of losing it. You have that many transfer portal players and you're already behind the 8 ball. How much can you keep them tied together? If your transfer portal players are more bought in with a week 1 win, do you choke away some of those games that you may have lost in previous seasons? Who knows? That's more of the reach of the 2, but I'm with you. Brian Kelly has to prove that he can win those big games. It goes back to, LSU beating Alabama in 2022 is like what he did at, when he beat Clemson at Notre Dame in 2020. Like, it's kind of like the same thing. It's like you got your one. It was in overtime. It was I'm with you. It's got to find a way to win the big one.
We got one more left, and this is for Vince.
Oh, you just know me too well. So the last one on the list would be that team up north, and that would be the Michigan Wolverines. They also have 4 ifs connected to them. Here we go.
These were much more fair and accurate.
But this is my favorite. This might be one of my favorite one. If there's a quarterback this season.
That was hilarious.
I thought that one was a pretty good way to put it. If a rebuilt skill core offers options, if a thinned out offensive line still gets a push, and if a second cornerback emerges.
This is I got to read the paragraph about the quarterback. It literally says if there's a quarterback this season.
Correct.
Michigan ranked 130th in yards per drop back in 2024. Granted, going 8-5 and beating Ohio State and Alabama while almost getting actively sabotaged by the quarterback position is an accomplishment in itself. But the 2023 national champion should probably get back to trying to win games the normal way. Either highly touted freshman Bryce Underwood or Fresno State transfer Mikey Keene must provide general competence unseen last fall. I mean, it's kind of funny and hyperbolic, but it's actually spot on.
That's accurate.
They were awful at quarterback last year. And I don't think they're not going to be that bad again. They're going to be significantly better, but significantly better doesn't mean you're a title contender.
Right.
Because this isn't can they go 9-3 instead of 7-5, which is what they did last year. That's possible. But you have to just get more competent play from the quarterback position. And I think they will. I think they'll at least be solid at quarterback, at least. Mikey Keene coming over from Fresno, as long as he's healthy. I know he battled a little bit of an injury last year. But, this is a kid that last season, guys, at Fresno threw for 2,800 yards. He threw for 29 the year before. He's got 42 touchdowns the last 2 years. He's throwing a decent amount of picks. This kid's played a lot of football. Had a 1,700-yard season at UCF. This is a veteran kid. He's a scrappy kid, 5'11" kid. He's basically going to hold down the fort until Bryce Underwood's ready, whether that's second week of fall camp, second week of the season, or October, November. That's really
whatever. Yeah.
I'll be shocked if it's next year, but
I would be too.
Right. And he was banged up in the spring. I think he was dealing with an injury he had from Fresno, which allowed Bryce Underwood to get a lot of reps. And that was a good learning experience for him. I personally would do with him what I've said with a lot of freshman quarterbacks. I've brought this up before. It's what I kind of said about, BC with Dylan Lonergan is kind of bring him along. You got a veteran, bring him along. Maybe honestly, I use this all the time because I think it worked. I would follow the Clemson plan with Trevor Lawrence. Like, get him in the game, let him have a role, let him play, but bring him along slowly. Don't throw him to the Wolves in Norman, Oklahoma. Bring him along slowly. Play him, but Mikey Keene's your starter. And then by game 4 or 5, if he shows he's ready to take the reins, you give him the reins. But if you put him in game 1 and he struggles in Norman, what do? You just ride the losing, or do you then bench him? You find out he's not ready as part of the rotation, then you can just ease back on the rotation a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's better than just benching him. So that's going to be the big thing, is if they can get Mikey Keene healthy, that's the plan. That's the guy you go with early, unless Bryce is just so ready that it's just like no-brainer. Because I would also say that Mikey Keene's not Kelly Bryant. Kelly Bryant was a better quarterback than Mikey Keene. Kelly Bryant took a team to the playoff the year before, but you get the point. That's going to be the key. But the other thing that hurts some guys is I don't love who they're throwing to. It's not terrible. They got the Indiana kid in who was okay in Indiana a few years ago. You've got some okay players, but losing Colson Loveland was huge. The weapons in the passing game are not great.
No, that's going to be the biggest hindrance to this team, in my opinion, because I'm with you guys. If Michigan's quarterback play is worse this year or even at the same level, I think that has to be almost intentional.
Is it even possible to be worse?
That's my point. It's like
I'm not even being hyperbolic. Can
seriously,
it actually be worse than what it was last year?
No.
You beat USC throwing for like 40-something yards.
Yeah. I mean, it was horrible. Quarterback play last year for them was bad. I say it sometimes to be hyperbolic, but there were throws that the starting quarterback at Michigan missed last year that I am 100% confident that you or I could make today. Look, it's not good. It was not good last year. They would have to intentionally be worse this upcoming year for us to sit back.
Do you want to hear the craziest stat I've ever seen? Michigan, a Power 4 team that does not run the triple option, had 4 games last year. They passed for less than 90 yards. Do you know what their record was in those 4 games?
Like 4-0.
4-0. I gave them too much credit. I said 40-something yards against USC. They passed for 32.
Wow.
They also passed for 86 yards in a win over Minnesota. They passed for 62 yards in a win over Ohio State and 75 yards in a win over Bama. But here's the reason they won those games. They beat USC, who was average by a field goal. They beat Minnesota, who was average at home by a field goal. And then they only scored 13 points against Ohio State, 19 points against Bama. And I believe one of their touchdowns was on like a 2-yard drive where they picked the pass off like inside the 10, ran it back inside the 5. That was one of their drives. You got a little bit lucky in that game. Ohio State lost that game more than Michigan won it.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to good credit to Michigan to punch the ball in the end zone when they got the short field.
Sure.
But the point is like, you can't replicate that this season if you want to be better than 8-4, 7-5. You just can't.
Well, I do not like their skilled talent. I don't. They're hoping that Donovan McCulley can replicate what he did at IU from 2023. And it's not like a Will Pauling situation where we've said a lot. It's like if you can get 2023 version of Will Pauling, but he was still a productive player in 2024. Donovan McCulley had 2 catches for 21 yards last year. Yeah, they also brought in Frederick Moore, or didn't bring in Frederick Moore. They returned Frederick Moore. 11 catches for $128 and a touchdown last year for Michigan, and scored his only touchdown in the bowl game against Alabama. He had 3 for 37. I'll give him that. Outside of that, they brought in Anthony Simpson, who last year at UMass caught 3 catches for 16 yards, and their tight end, Marlon Klein, had 13 catches for 108 yards. He was behind Colson Loveland, but I do not like
the UMass kid, Anthony Simpson. He only had 3 catches for 16 yards last year because he was hurt. He had 57 for 792 the year before at UMass. But when you pop in the film, though, Trev, you're like, he's a G5 receiver.
Yeah.
Like he is. He is. I mean, he's a solid player at this level. He's a guy that you want to be as a backup. I'll say this, like if we're talking about like Notre Dame, he's not sniffing the field at Notre Dame. He's not sniffing the field at Notre Dame. Frederick Moore's not sniffing the field at Notre Dame. So it's a major question mark. Major question mark.
Yep.
Somebody in the chat said their receivers are worse than Penn State's last year. I'm like, with all due respect, Penn State had solid receivers last year. They were solid. There's a reason why other P4 teams got all of them out of the portal. They weren't championship caliber, but that unit last year is significantly better, in my opinion, than the one that you have now. Trey Wallace and Amari Evans are significantly better, in my opinion, than anything that Michigan has coming back this season. It's a tough one. And then you lose your stud tight end. But they do have some talent there. I do. There's some talent there. And then the thing is, I don't know that I love their offensive line, fellas.
Yeah.
Their left tackle's a question mark. So I actually thought these question marks were actually legitimate. I think these were legitimate. These were very fair questions.
Michigan's calling card is usually their offensive line too, and I think it's a question mark this year, which
absolutely
that's concerning.
I just don't know that the talent level is what it was before, guys.
Because you're going away from what you used to be, and that's just not a good recipe, especially if you're planning on you are starting a new quarterback, and if you're planning on starting a freshman quarterback who does like to move around and is agile, all of those things, that's great. But if you can't protect him, that's going to be a problem for his development, his maturity, and allowing him to be successful and lead you to wins. That's tough. That's a tough spot to be in if you're a Michigan fan, for sure.
Yeah, and these are just questions that, guys, I don't know that they have the talent to overcome. With a lot of these teams we've talked about, it's like, if this talented guy can step up, if that talented guy can step up. I don't know that Michigan has that. I don't know that they have that really talented guy that's ready to step up. And that's the thing that concerns me, is I really question that. And then their last one was if a second corner can emerge. The defense I'm actually not overly concerned about. I think their defense was excellent the second half of last year. Once they kind of figured out Wink Martindale's system and he kind of learned the players, I thought the second half of the year they were excellent. I mean, they were the only reason that they were even in games.
Yep.
I mean, think about it, guys. They won their last 3 games and gave up 6 points, 10 points, and 13 points. Against Indiana, they got beat, but they only gave up 20 points. Oregon scored on them, but if you go back and watch that game, early on, I thought the Michigan defense was holding their own, but you can't keep putting them on the field, drive after drive after drive. Eventually they just wore down a little bit. But last year, I mean, their defense is a big reason that they were in a lot of these football games. They lost a game by 2 touchdowns in which they gave up 267 yards of offense and 4.7 yards per play because they lost 21-7 to Illinois. like their defense, I think is going to be even with losing Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, I think their defense is still going to be pretty good. Is it championship caliber? That's a different question, but it's still going to be pretty good. I don't know that offense is good enough for them to compete for a Big Ten championship, much less a national championship. I really don't. I look at this roster, I'm like, how do they compete with Ohio State and Penn State? Well, I would have said the same thing about their defense last year. But at least last year they had Mason Graham. They didn't have Colson Loveland and Will Johnson. They were out for that game, but they at least had a couple of those guys. But that's, again, I would have said the same thing last year. But I still look at it. But they went 8-4 last year. 7-5 last year in the regular season. Even with the win over Ohio State, they still went 7-5. Even with the last second win over USC, they still went 7-5. I just don't see a roster that's like, man, they're going to figure it out. If their quarterback steps up, boy, whoo, doggy. Tell you one thing I really do like about this team, though. They got a really good backfield. They're on offense. They got a really good backfield. Problem is, will their line be good enough to open up the holes, and will teams just say, look, we're not going to put 9 in the box. We're going to put 11 in the box. We don't even think you can throw on us even. Like last year, you could kind of do that. Like, hey, we're just going to not cover your outside receivers, and we still think there's a 50-50 chance you're not going to complete this pass.
And
you know what I mean?
And might have been 70-30, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, when Alex Orji was in the game, that was definitely the case. I mean, he couldn't throw a hitch route. I mean, it was bad.
Where did
I
he
still
end
say
up?
they should have leaned into him to being their starter. I think UNLV.
Yeah.
They should have leaned into him being the starter, though. Who cares
just
if you can't run
owned.
it? Because like I said, they won 4 games throwing less than 90 yards. Just run a single wing offense, essentially, where he's just running read zone and hitting the occasional pass on the outside.
Yeah.
I still think that would have been their best option, but how sad is that?
Yeah. That should not be the case, especially coming off of a national championship, by the way.
Hey, guys, before we go, that was great stuff. Before we go, we'll have a couple super chats here real quick, but there's a couple other teams we could kind of go over. As those are the ones I really wanted to touch on. I think what we learned from what we were talking about is there's a lot more teams than normal that I think have the potential to win a championship this year. Part of that's because I still don't see, as of yet, there's still no elite, 2021 Georgia, 2020 Bama, 2019 LSU, 2018 Clemson, 2013 Florida State type of team out there that we know of right now. But I just also think that there's just a lot of teams that are really good also, that if this happens, if that happens, they can win a title, which is what I found, honestly, the most fascinating about this article, is because other than, like, we didn't talk, like, Michigan, I don't think has a prayer to win a championship. I don't think Florida has a prayer. I don't think Miami's a championship team. I don't think Ole Miss is a championship team. Those are other teams that are on this list. But the rest of the teams, there is a scenario in which I could see that team competing for and winning a championship. Will it be harder for a team like A&M? Of course. But is it out of the question? Not really, no. And I think that's what's going to make this year of college football so fun. Before we go, though, fellas, we do have two super chats I want to get to. We have one from Ty. Appreciate that very, very much, Ty. He says, great pickup. Thanks for everything. Go Irish. That's obviously going back from when we did the Teddy Jarrard pickup. I will be on IB Nation Sports Beat tonight at 5:30, breaking down the Teddy Jarrard commitment with Sean. So tune into that. And then Ryan Elliott says, love the recruiting by the Irish Freeman. Changed the game for Notre Dame. Very pumped. Ryan, I appreciate that as well, man. It was it's a big pickup when you can add a highly ranked quarterback with the tools that Teddy Jarrard has this early in the process. Boy, that's a big one. So appreciate that. But we'll be back tomorrow at 1:00 for our our Friday free for all mailbag. I know Vince is excited about that. And then we're going to have a nice, fun, relaxing weekend. As of tomorrow, as of today, the show we do next Thursday will be breaking down the first day of fall camp. We are officially a week away from Notre Dame kicking off fall camp, so I can't wait for it. It's going to be an absolute blast. So, hey, for Vince and Trev, I'm Brian, folks. Hit that like button on your way out. Make sure you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We appreciate you being with us. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.